The rain wasn't just falling, it was attacking. Port Halcyon in a late November storm was a special kind of miserable. The wind came off the water carrying the smell of salt, diesel, and something rotten from the piers. It slammed the rain sideways against the plate glass front of the Spin and Dry, making the whole building shudder. I was on my knees, scrubbing at a streak of powdered detergent that had caked onto the linoleum by dryer number 12. It was almost 2 a.m. My shift at the laundromat ended at 3, and then I had a high-rise apartment in the Spire building to clean before sunrise. My 22nd birthday had been 3 weeks ago, and I'd celebrated it by working a double. My world was small, and it smelled like bleach. Railspur Avenue outside was a smear of colors. The red neon from the Pacific Bar across the street bled into the oily puddles, fighting with the sickly green of our own flickering sign. The security cameras mounted on the traffic lights dotted the street, their little red eyes like insects watching everything. Watching me. My knees ached. The thin fabric of my jeans was damp from the floor, and my ponytail was stuck to the back of my neck with sweat. I pushed a stray piece of hair out of my eyes with the back of my wrist, leaving a soapy smear on my skin. Just get the floor done. Eden, get the trash out, get to the Spire. Get the check. Pay the bill for Mom's medication. Don't think. Just move. The bell over the door jangled, a harsh, rusty sound that cut through the hum of the last few dryers. I didn't look up, just kept scrubbing. We're closing in about an hour, I called out, my voice flat. Last wash has to be in by 2:15. Heavy footsteps, not sneakers, not work boots, hard-soled shoes that click confidently on the dirty tile. They stopped right next to me. You the only one here. The voice was greasy, like the air in a cheap diner. I finally looked up. He was a big man, soft around the middle, wearing a cheap tan raincoat that was already soaked through. He held a clipboard with a soggy piece of paper attached. He flashed a laminated ID badge so fast I only caught the blue eagle and the words Urban Integrity. Yes, I'm Eden Clark. I'm the night attendant. I slowly got to my feet, wiping my hands on my jeans. My heart gave a stupid, heavy knock against my ribs. Bram Calder, Urban Integrity Bureau, he said, puffing his chest out. He looked me up and down, a slow, appraising stare that made my skin crawl. We're doing spot checks, routine hygiene and safety inspection. My stomach tightened. Inspection, now it's 2 a.m. We go where the violations are, sweetheart. He made a show of looking around. And this place, it's got violations. He tapped his clipboard. Gonna need to see your commercial sanitation license. My what? My mind went blank. The owner, Mr. Patel, handled all the paperwork. I just cleaned the lint traps and mopped the floor. I think the owner keeps that in the office. He's not here. Not here, Bram Calder repeated, clicking his tongue. That's a problem, a big one. Operating without a posted license. That's a $500 fine, minimum. Could shut you down right now. $500. That was 2 weeks of this shift. That was the electric bill and the bus pass. I started to tremble. A familiar, cold fear that started in my gut and spread to my fingers. I thought of my last landlord, the one who'd inspected my apartment every other day until I moved. I thought of the stack of envelopes on my tiny kitchen counter, all stamped in red final notice. Please, I whispered, hating the weakness in my own voice. It's not my fault. I just work here. I can call Mr. Patel. I don't want to talk to Patel, he said, stepping closer. The smell of cheap cigars and wet wool rolled off him. I'm talking to you. You're the one on site. You're the one responsible. He smiled, and it was the worst part about him. But maybe we can work something out. He set his clipboard down on top of dryer number 12. The Bureau, we value cooperation. People who are willing to help us out. He reached out and touched my arm, just above the elbow. His fingers were thick and damp. I flinched like I'd been burned and took a step back, bumping hard into the folding table. The broken neon sign outside cast a buzzing, purple light on his face. I don't know what you mean. I said, my throat so tight the words barely came out. "Oh, I think you do." His smile widened. "A pretty girl like you don't need to be scrubbing floors. A little cooperation and I could forget I ever saw this place. I could lose the report. Easy." He lunged, faster than I thought he could move. His hand clamped around my wrist. It wasn't just a touch, it was a grab. A claim. His thumb pressed down hard on the bone. Pain, sharp and bright, shot up my arm. "Let go of me," I choked out, pulling back, but his grip was like a steel trap. "Please, you're hurting me." "That's up to you, isn't it?" he sneered, pulling me slightly toward him. "We can do this easy, or we can do this hard." Clang jangle. The bell on the door sounded like a gunshot. We both froze. Bram didn't let go, but his head snapped toward the entrance. The man who stood there didn't look like he belonged on Rail Spur Avenue. He was tall, wearing a long, dark wool coat that was almost black with rain. It wasn't a cheap raincoat, like Bram's. It was tailored, sharp, and probably cost more than my last 6 months' rent. He was young, maybe late 20s, with dark hair slicked back from the rain and eyes so dark they looked like holes in the dim light. His shoes. I noted with the strange, specific focus of terror were expensive leather, streaked with the grime of the docks. He wasn't alone. A second man, built like a vending machine and with a face that looked like it had been carved from rock, stood just behind him, scanning the laundromat. The man in the coat didn't move. He just looked at us. His gaze went from Bram's fleshy, triumphant face down to the hand gripping my arm, and then, finally, to my face. The room was silent except for the hum of the dryers and the hissing of the rain outside. Bram, still holding me, tried to bluff. "This is an official inspection. City business. You need to leave." The man in the coat tilted his head, a small, curious motion. He took one slow step inside, then another. He stopped about 10 feet away. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't yell or threaten. He just spoke, and his voice was low and clear and cut through the air like a razor. "Who just touched her?" It wasn't a question. It was a sentence. Bram's bravado evaporated. It was like watching a balloon deflate. His face went pale. His mouth opened and closed, and he let go of my wrist so fast I stumbled back against the folding table. A little pop sound as his skin left mine. I was this is a misunderstanding," Bram stammered. The tall man ignored him completely. His eyes were locked on me, on my wrist. I automatically cradled it against my chest. It was already turning red. The man walked past Bram, close enough to brush his shoulder, and came to the paper towel dispenser on the wall. He pulled one sheet off, folded it neatly into a square, and held it out to me. I stared at it, confused. "For your face," he said. His voice was still low, but the cutting edge was gone. It was just quiet. I hadn't even realized I was crying. The tears were mixing with the soap scum on my cheek. My hand trembled as I took the paper towel. "Thank you." His eyes never left my wrist. The other man, the big one, had his phone out. He wasn't aiming it at us, and he was aiming it through the front window at Bram's car, a beat-up sedan parked at the curb. I saw the flash go off. Once. Twice. He tapped at his screen, then stepped outside into the rain. He walked around the car, took another picture of the license plate, and texted again. Then he came back in, shaking the water from his shoulders. He made a small, sharp gesture with his chin toward the ceiling camera. Then he tapped his own chest, where a small, dark lens was clipped to his jacket. "Turn theirs off. Turn mine on." The meaning was unmistakable, so the truth isn't edited. Bram Calder was sweating now, the rain on his coat mixing with a different, sour-smelling dampness. "Look, mister, I don't know who you think you are." "You don't," the tall man said. He pulled out his own phone. It was thin, black, and looked severe. He tapped the screen once and put it on speaker, setting it down on dryer number 12, right where Bram's clipboard lay. A phone rang. Once, twice, a sleepy, annoyed voice answered. "Yeah, this is Henderson." "Mr. Henderson," the tall man said, his voice polite. "This is Cashin Ruggiero. I'm at the Spin and Dry on Railspur. One of your men from the Urban Integrity Bureau is here. Bram Calder. My breath caught in my throat. Ruggiero. Even I knew that name. Everyone in Port Halcyon knew that name. It was whispered. It was the name that owned the quiet. Expensive restaurants I would never clean, the trucks that moved on the docks at 3 a.m, the silence that fell over a bar when certain people walked in. On the phone, Henderson's voice was suddenly very, very awake. Mr. Ruggiero, I wasn't aware. Is there a problem? Your man is here at 2 a.m, Cassian said, his tone conversational, shaking down the night attendant, demanding cooperation in exchange for overlooking fictional violations. He paused. He also put his hands on her. I did not, Bram yelped, his voice cracking. Cassian just looked at him, and Bram fell silent. Mr. Ruggiero, I assure you, that is not our policy, Henderson sputtered. I will look into this immediately. I'll send a supervisor. Don't bother, Cassian cut him off. Here's what you're going to do. You're going to fire him, not suspend, fire, now. I can't just, there's a process. And Cassian continued, as if the man hadn't spoken, am sending a clip from our own camera, along with Mr. Calder's license plate, to my lawyer and to the Halcyon feed. He picked up his phone, his eyes still on Bram. In 10 minutes. Everyone in this neighborhood is going to know that this girl, he looked at me, really looked, for the first time, is not just the cleaning lady. She's with me. And you touched her. He hung up. The silence that followed was total. Bram Calder was the color of dirty dishwater. The big man, Cade, was already typing. His thumbs a blur. My own phone, sitting on the folding table, buzzed. Then it buzzed again, and again, a cacophony of notifications. I looked down. The local gossip blog, the Halcyon feed, had a new post, a grainy photo of Bram's car, the caption, U, I, B. Inspector Bram Calder harassing workers at the Railspur Spin and Dry sources say he picked the wrong one, Ruggiero. Messages were pouring in under it. Who's the girl? Damn, Calder is a dead man. Is she Ruggiero's new person? I saw him go in, knew he was a creep. My head was spinning. The whole laundromat felt like it was tilting. The few other customers, a woman nodding off by a dryer and an old man reading a paper, were both staring at me, not with pity, with a strange, new kind of respect and fear. Cassian Ruggiero turned his attention back to me. His face softened. Just a fraction. You're not going back to your old room tonight, he said. Not a question. What, my apartment? Someone just traced your address from the employee file in the back office. Cade rumbled, not looking up from his phone. They were very quick. Too quick. I can't just leave, I said, my voice shaking again. But for a new reason. I have my job at the Spire. I can't afford a hotel. This isn't an offer to pay for a hotel, Cassian said. He stepped a little closer. He smelled like the rain and something clean, like iron. I'm moving you. Tonight. Your choice. He added, seeing the panic in my eyes. You can stay. You can go back to your room. But if someone has touched you, they'll come back. And they won't be asking for permits next time. He was right. I knew he was. The landlord, the medical bills. The world was full of men like Bram Calder. Men who saw a girl on her knees scrubbing a floor and saw an opportunity. They saw a loan. Outside, a police siren wailed in the distance, growing closer and then fading, turning off onto another street. They weren't coming here. They were just noise. The rain finally eased, softening to a whisper against the glass. I looked down at my hand. The red mark on my wrist was already darkening to a bruised purple, a perfect, ugly circle. I took a deep, shuddering breath. The air still smelled like bleach, but now it was mixed with the clean, cold scent of iron. I looked up at Cassian Ruggiero. Okay. Cade drove. I sat in the back of the black sedan, my hands clasped so tightly in my lap my knuckles were white. Cassian Ruggiero sat in the passenger seat, a dark silhouette against the passing city. No one spoke. The car was silent. The engine a low hum that you felt more than heard. It smelled like clean leather and the cold night air. We left the grime of Railspur Avenue behind, the car climbing the hills, moving inland toward the cluster of glass towers that scraped the low-hanging clouds. The streets here were clean, the rain washing the sidewalks, the traffic lights changing with quiet, orderly clicks. We passed the Meridian, where I was supposed to be cleaning a penthouse bathroom right now. The irony tasted like ash in my mouth. The car slowed, and Cade turned into a private underground garage. He didn't take a ticket. The arm blocking the entrance simply rose as we approached. We parked in a reserved spot. We didn't go through the main lobby. Cade led us to a private elevator bank, all brushed steel and dark wood. He pressed a black key fob against a sensor, and the doors slid open. The ride was silent, fast. My ears popped. The display inside showed the numbers climbing 10, 15, 20. The doors opened on a small, carpeted landing. There was only one door, floor 27. North Star Trust sublet, Cade said, his voice a low rumble. Fully secure. No one gets up here without clearance. He unlocked the door and pushed it open. Stepping aside, Cassian entered first. I hesitated, my dirty sneakers feeling like an insult to the plush, pale gray carpet. "It's all right," he said, not looking back. I stepped inside. My apartment in Gable Courts could have fit into the entryway, but this place wasn't like the penthouses I cleaned. It wasn't flashy. There was no gold, no giant crystal chandeliers, no loud art. It was quiet, understated. A long, deep sofa in charcoal gray, tables made of dark, heavy wood, a sleek, modern kitchen area, and a wall, an entire wall made of glass. I walked toward it, pulled by the view. The storm had passed. The city was spread out below, a sea of glittering lights. I had spent my entire 22 years on the ground, scrubbing the floors of this city, dodging its dangers, always looking up. I had never, not once, seen it from above. I could see the whole grid, the black ribbon of the river, the bridges stitched with light, and far, far below, the industrial glow of the docks, Pier 9. I could see the ant-sized trucks moving under the floodlights. It made me dizzy. It made me feel like I wasn't real. Eden. I turned. Cassian was standing by the coffee table. He had placed a white plastic box on it, a first aid kit. He hadn't brought it to me. He'd set it down and stepped back, near a low, modern fireplace where electric flames flickered, casting a warm, orange light. He was giving me space. "For your wrist," he said. I looked down at the angry purple-red mark. It was already swelling. I sat on the edge of the sofa. The fabric was impossibly soft, like a cloud, and fumbled with the clasp on the kit. Inside, antiseptic wipes, gauze, medical tape. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely tear the paper off the wipe. He watched me, his dark eyes unreadable in the dim light. "You were a nursing student," he said. It wasn't a question. I froze, the wipe hovering over my skin. My blood ran cold. How did you know that?" "Cade," he replied, as if that explained everything. "He ran your name. Eden Clark, 22, enrolled at Port Halcyon Community College, pre-nursing track, dropped out 6 months ago." He paused, his gaze steady. "High medical debt, your mother's." It felt like he had reached inside my chest and pulled out all my secrets. The shame, the exhaustion, the constant grinding fear of the bills. "She's sick," I whispered, focusing on the bandage, on anything but his eyes. "The medication I have to work. I have to—" "You don't have to explain," he said, cutting me off, but not unkindly. "You clean contract work, high-end apartments." "The Spire, the Meridian," I confirmed, my voice flat. "It pays better than the laundromat. I need the money. I needed to be at the Spire 2 hours ago. They'll fire me." "They won't," he said. "Cade made a call. You have the flu." I looked up, stunned. He'd just handled it. He walked over to the glass wall, his hands clasped behind his back. His reflection was a pale ghost against the dark city. What happened tonight with Bram Calder wasn't random. He's not a real city inspector, he's a tool. A tool for who? I managed to wrap the gauze around my wrist. It was clumsy, but it covered the bruise. A crew that calls itself the Docklight Syndicate, they're bottom feeders. They specialize in soft pressure. They don't use weapons if they can use a clipboard and a fake ID. But that badge looked real. It's a good fake, Cassian agreed. The syndicate uses these permits, these violations, to trap independent workers, delivery drivers, food cart vendors, night shift laundromat attendants. They lean on you, demand cash, or other things. His voice hardened on the last words. Cooperation. The word Calder had used. My stomach twisted. But why? What's the point just to scare people? The point, he said, turning back to me, is the land. The Ashford family wants the entire riverfront, from Railspur up to the old cannery. They want to tear it all down, build a luxury shopping district, the Halcyon Promenade. Ashford, the name was a cold stone in my gut. I cleaned Mr. Ashford Jr.'s penthouse at the Meridian, the one with the white carpets. The city council won't force evict everyone, not yet, Cassian continued, his voice low and steady, rhythmic as a train on a distant track. It's bad press, so the Ashfords pay the Docklight Syndicate, and the syndicate uses men like Calder to inspect and fine and harass. They make life impossible for the small people, the renters, the shop owners. They soften the area for clearance. They push you out, one by one, until there's no one left to protest when the bulldozers finally arrive. An icy dread washed over me, colder than the rain had been. My building, I whispered. The studios on Gable Court. That's right by the old cannery. Cassian just looked at me. He didn't have to confirm it. Calder hadn't found me by accident. He had targeted me, and I was living right in the middle of their soft clearance zone. They know who I am, I said, the words catching in my throat. They know where I live. Yes, he said, which is why I'm making you an offer, a contract. I recoiled. A contract, you mean working for you? The name Ruggiero echoed in the silent. Expensive room. This is how it happened. This is how girls like me disappeared. Working with us, he corrected, his voice firm. I run a charitable front, the Harbor Haven Foundation. It operates a chain of community kitchens, a few legitimate restaurants. They need cleaning services. Professional, reliable, someone we can trust. He was offering me a job, a cleaning job, the same thing I always did. You would work for Harbor Haven. He laid it out as if explaining a business deal. Your schedule would be better. The pay is substantially better. In exchange, you get a new apartment, secure. You get this. He gestured to a small, sleek black phone charging on the counter. Encrypted, untraceable. You get a lawyer on retainer from Aurelia Legal Aid, free of charge. And you get us, Cade, me. If anyone so much as looks at you wrong, you make one call. That's the deal. It sounded too good. It sounded like a cage. In my world, nothing was free. And what do you get, I asked, my voice sharp with suspicion. Me am I? Am I bound to you? Am I your property? Like everyone on the Halcyon feed is already saying. For a second, I saw something flicker in his eyes, annoyance. No, something closer to regret. No, he said, and his voice was absolute. You are bound to no one. The contract is a legal document. It has a withdrawal clause. You can walk away, anytime, no penalties. All you have to do is sign it. He looked at me, his gaze intense. My word is my bond, Eden, but I want you to have the paper. Your signature matters. It means you chose this. I stared at him. I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to. But the habit of running, of dodging, of being the prey, it was burned into me. I looked away, toward my own cheap smartphone, which had been buzzing nonstop on the table. The feed, the gossip. I need to think. Before I could finish the sentence, my phone lit up again. Not a notification from the feed, a text message from an unknown number. My stomach clenched. With a shaking hand, I picked it up. It was a picture. I stopped breathing. It was a picture of my apartment door, Unit 3B, the cheap, flimsy plywood door. The lock was splintered. The wood around the knob was shattered, blasted inward. Someone had used a crowbar or kicked it in. My heart didn't just drop. It evaporated. It left a cold, hollow void in my chest. Everything I owned, my mother's photograph, my secondhand nursing textbooks, my spare cleaning uniforms, my life. They hadn't just found my address. They'd already been there. I must have made a sound, a small, strangled gasp, because Cassian was suddenly closer, still not touching me, but he was there. Eden. I couldn't speak. I just turned the phone screen toward him. He looked at the picture. His jaw tightened. The quiet, controlled man was gone for a fraction of a second, replaced by something cold and absolute. They were already there, I whispered, the phone slipping from my fingers onto the soft couch. They were waiting for me. Cassian met my gaze. He didn't say, "I told you so." He didn't have to. The choice was gone. The world had made it for me. I took a shaky breath and stood up. "Yes," I said, my voice thin but clear. "I agree, I'll sign." Relief flooded his face, so subtle it was almost invisible. He nodded once. "Good. Kate will finalize the apartment transfer. You'll stay here tonight. This is the safest place in Port Halcyon. Sleep." He looked at the sky, which was just beginning to lighten with the first hint of gray. "In a few hours, when the sun is up, I'll take you back to your building. We'll get your things, whatever's left." He and Cade moved toward the door. Cade, who had been standing silent as a statue by the entrance, gave me a short, professional nod. "Ma'am, we'll have a man in the hall all night." Cassian paused at the threshold, one hand on the doorframe, and he looked back at me. I was standing alone in the massive, quiet room, a 22-year-old ghost in a borrowed fortress, still smelling of bleach and fear. "Eden," he said, and his voice was so low I had to strain to hear it. "Yes? If anyone ever touches you again," Mauri said, his dark eyes holding mine, "do not apologize." The door clicked shut. The heavy thud of the deadbolt sliding home echoed in the silence. I stood there for a long time. Then I walked to the solid wood door and pressed my back against it, sliding down until I was sitting on the floor. I hugged my knees to my chest. I looked out the window at the million lights of Port Halcyon, a city I thought I knew. I was terrified. I was in a strange man's apartment, a dangerous man's apartment, my old life in splinters just like my door. But as I sat there, listening to the faint, steady breathing of the guard in the hallway, I felt something else. Something I hadn't felt in years. It was a strange, heavy, and completely unfamiliar feeling. Safety. Sleep didn't really come. I drifted in a state of suspended terror, the silence of the 27th floor somehow louder than the nightly sirens of Gable Courts. I woke up on the massive gray sofa, a soft cashmere throw blanket pulled up to my chin. I didn't remember covering myself. I must have. I told myself. I must have. The sun was trying to burn through the morning fog, turning the sky over Port Halcyon into a pearly, bruised gray. The view from the glass wall was no longer magical. It was just high. I felt disconnected, like I was watching a movie of my own life. By 7 o'clock, Cassian and Cade were back. They didn't knock. I heard the lock, a smooth, heavy snick, and they were inside. Cassian was wearing a different dark coat. Cade the same impassive expression. "Are you ready?" Cassian asked. I was wearing the same clothes from the laundromat. My skin still felt grimy with dried soap and fear. I just nodded, pulling my thin jacket tight. "I need my textbooks and a picture of my mom." The drive back was the reverse of the night before, a descent from the clean, quiet heights into the gritty, noisy reality of the river wards. Gable Courts looked even worse in the daylight. The brick was crumbling, the windows streaked with filth. The front door of the building, which was supposed to be locked, was propped open with a soggy brick. My stomach was a cold knot. This was the part of the nightmare where you have to walk back into the dark room. We went up the stairs, 3rd floor. The hallway smelled the way it always did, stale cooking grease, mildew, and the acrid tang of cheap cigarettes. The smell was stronger as we approached my door. Unit 3, B. The photo hadn't done it justice. The wood around the knob was completely splintered, hanging in jagged teeth. The lock set itself was gone, lying on the stained carpet 20 feet down the hall. Someone had just kicked it until it gave. Cade went in first, moving with a fluid grace that was terrifying in a man his size. Cassian stopped in the doorway, blocking it. He didn't look at the mess inside. He just stood there, his head tilted, his eyes scanning the hallway. He was listening, smelling. "Stay here," he said to me, his voice low. "It's my stuff," I said, pushing past him. The violation hit me like a physical blow. My tiny studio room was destroyed. They hadn't been looking for anything, they had just been angry. My mattress was flipped. My small box of groceries was dumped on the floor, flour, rice, a precious bag of coffee beans scattered everywhere. And my textbooks, my anatomy and physiology books, the ones I'd bought used for $150, were torn. Pages were ripped out, tossed around the room like confetti. That's what broke me. Not the door, not the fear, the books. The one thing that represented a future, a way out. They tore my books. I whispered. My duffel bag, the one I used for the spire, was lying in the corner. I picked it up and numbly began shoving my few possessions inside, my spare uniforms, my toothbrush, the small, framed photo of my mom, which was thankfully unharmed on the floor by my nightstand. Cassian stepped into the room. He wasn't looking at the damage. He was looking at me. His gaze was sharp, analytical. He sniffed the air, his expression one of faint disgust. "That smell," he said. "The cigarettes." Before I could answer, a voice creaked from the hallway. "Eden, honey, is that you?" I turned. The door to 3C Mrs. Aaron's apartment was open a tiny crack. The security chain was pulled tight. I could see one of her eyes, wrinkled and terrified. "Mrs. Aaron," I said, moving to the doorway. I'm okay." "Thank God," she whispered, her eye darting to Cassian and Cade, who was now checking the window lock. "They came. Eden. Last night. Not long after, well, after everyone started texting about that picture from the feed, 2 of them. Big, mean-looking." "What did they want?" I asked, my blood running cold. "They wanted you. They banged on my door first, looking for you. I told them I didn't know nothing. They asked who you were working for. Honey, said you made a big mistake. They were loud, and they smelled awful, like an ashtray." "Did you call the police?" Cassian asked, his voice calm and polite. "Mrs." Aaron let out a short, bitter laugh. "The police down here. By the time they showed up, these guys would be gone and my door would be kicked in, too. No, honey, you keep your head down. I kept mine down." "You did the right thing, ma'am," Cassian said. He gave her a short, respectful nod. "We're handling it." She looked at him, really looked at him, and her fear seemed to ease. Just a fraction. "You're the one from the stories, aren't you, Ruggiero?" He didn't confirm or deny. He just watched her. "Well," she said, pulling the door a little closer, "you watch out for this one. She's a good girl." The chain rattled as the door closed. I turned back to the room, zipping my duffel bag. It was all I had left. "They're sloppy," a low voice rumbled. Cade. He was on one knee by my overturned bed frame. He'd been running his thick fingers along the underside. "What do you mean?" I asked. He held up a small, black plastic square, no bigger than a postage stamp. A tiny wire antenna stuck out of it. "This." My stomach turned over. A bug, a listening device, in my bedroom. "They planted a bug," I stammered. Cassian walked over and took it from Cade. He looked at it for a moment before crushing it between his thumb and forefinger. The cheap plastic snapped. "It's cheap," he said, dusting the fragments from his hand. "Low frequency. Battery-powered. It wouldn't have lasted 12 hours. They were in a hurry. They expected you to come back here last night. They wanted to hear who you called. He looked at me. They didn't expect you to disappear. My old phone, the one with the cracked screen, buzzed in my jacket pocket. I'd almost forgotten about it. The new, encrypted one felt like a heavy, cold stone in my other pocket. I pulled out the old one, a text from an unknown number. My fingers were numb as I opened it. South Ferry Terminal, noon. Come alone or the girl from 3C gets it next. I couldn't breathe. They were threatening misses. Aaron, I showed the phone to Cassian. He read the text. His face didn't change, but the air around him went still. It's a trap, isn't it? I whispered, my voice shaking. They're going to hurt me. Or her. Cassian looked up from the phone, his dark eyes meeting mine. He glanced out the window at the gray, unforgiving daylight. He gave a tiny shrug, a movement so small it was barely there. It is, he said simply, so we go in the daylight. The South Ferry Terminal wasn't the tourist spot with the fancy restaurants. It was the commuter dock, a wide, open-air concrete slab smelling of diesel fumes, roasted peanuts, and the metallic tang of the river. It was loud. The 1205 ferry to the industrial yards was boarding, and the place was a churning mass of dock workers, office clerks, and tourists who had gotten lost. We didn't drive. We walked. Cade had parked the sedan 3 blocks away. Cassian had told me to leave my duffel bag in the car. We're not staying, he'd said. Cade wasn't with us. He had vanished into the crowd the second we got out of the car, melting away like a shadow. It was just me and Cassian, walking side by side toward the ticket booths. He was wearing his dark wool coat. I was wearing my thin jacket. We looked like a mistake, a mismatch. A man detached himself from the wall by the newspaper stand. He was all leering smile and bad angles. He wore a thin, cracked leather jacket, and his hair was greasy. The smell hit me from 10 feet away. Cheap cigarettes. Well, 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 he sneered. He stepped right in front of me, forcing me to stop. He completely ignored Cassian. His eyes, small and piggy, raked over me. Look who it is. Ruggiero's new project. Heard you were something special. He laughed, a wet, hacking sound. Heard you got my associate, Bram, fired. This must be Gunner Pike. The name fit. He looked sharp and stupid and dangerous. You're the one who sent the text, I said, my voice coming out stronger than I expected. Maybe I am, he smirked. You came, alone. She's not alone, Cassian said. His voice was quiet, deadly quiet. Gunner finally turned to him, his smirk widening. Oh, yeah, you, the big boss. He spat on the concrete, just missing Cassian's expensive shoe. You think you run this town. Ruggiero, you don't run the docks, and you don't run this girl. She's just a piece of trash from Gable Courts, and we're the trash men. I flinched, but Cassian didn't. He didn't react to the insult at all. He didn't even look at Gunner. He looked at me. Eden, he said, his voice calm and focused, cutting through the noise of the terminal. Last night, at your apartment, who touched your things? It was such a strange question. It threw me off. What? Who was there? He pressed. You smelled them. You heard them. I looked at Gunner, at his leering, confident face, and I looked past him into the shadows by the vending machines. It was them, I said, the pieces clicking into place. The smell, it's him. I pointed at Gunner. He smells just like my hallway. Mrs. Aaron said there were 2. Gunner's smile faltered, just a fraction. What is this? 2 men, I said, my voice getting louder. Baseball caps. They kicked in my door. They smelled like this. She's got a good nose, a voice rumbled. From the shadows by the vending machines, Cade emerged. He was not alone. He had a man half his age by the back of the arm. Gripping him like a child, the man was squirming, wearing a baseball cap and a terrified expression, and he smelled exactly like Gunner. Let him go, Gunner shouted, finally losing his cool. Cade pushed the man forward. He stumbled and fell at Gunner's feet. As he put his hand out to break his fall, his sleeve rode up. On his wrist, I saw it, a crude, jailhouse-style tattoo, a child's kite, with the string broken. I saw him, I gasped. I saw him on the stairs when I was leaving for my shift 2 days ago. He was watching me. Cashin nodded once, a small, satisfied motion. Gunnar looked around, his eyes darting. He was realizing this was not a private meeting. This was a stage. "You're dead," Gunnar snarled, reaching into his jacket. "I wouldn't," Cassian said. He didn't move. He didn't raise his voice. He just reached into his own coat. Gunnar froze. He was expecting a weapon. Cashin pulled out a folded piece of paper. He didn't hand it to Gunnar. He handed it to me. I unfolded it. My hands were shaking. It was a legal document, stamped by the Crown Point Metropolitan Tribunal, a civil harassment restraining order. My name was at the top as the protected person, and under restrained person, John Gunnar Pike and Associates. "It's from Aurelia Legal Aid," Cassian said, his voice loud enough for the people nearby to hear. "It was filed an hour ago. It orders you to stay 500 yards away from Miss Clark, her home, her place of work, and her person." Gunnar stared at the paper, and then he did something I didn't expect. He threw his head back and laughed, a loud, booming, false laugh. "A piece of paper," he roared. "A piece of paper. You're going to stop me with a goddamn piece of paper, Ruggiero. You're soft. You're weak." His laughter was too loud. It drew attention. The crowd waiting for the ferry, the dock workers, the families, they all turned. They stopped talking. "He's threatening her," a woman near the hot dog stand said. "That's Gunnar Pike," a man in a longshoreman's jacket muttered. "Docklight scum." And then an old woman, sitting on a bench with a small rolling suitcase, pulled out her smartphone. She aimed it right at Gunnar. The screen was bright. She was live streaming. "Go on, tough guy," she said, her voice like gravel and nicotine. "You heard him. He's threatening the girl. Touch her. Try it. We're all watching. The whole city's watching now." Suddenly, 10 other phones were out. 20. Cade had his phone out, the red light blinking, aimed right at Gunnar's face. Gunnar's laugh died in his throat. His face turned a mottled, angry red. He looked at the phones. He looked at the security guards by the main door, who were now watching him. He looked at Cassian, who hadn't moved a muscle. He was trapped, not by guns, not by knives, by 50 witnesses. Cassian looked at me, his eyes calm. He spoke, his voice low, just for me, but the words carried, "Sometimes, Eden, daylight is stronger than a knife." Gunnar Pike took a step back. He was shaking with rage. He couldn't hit us. He couldn't grab me. He couldn't do anything. He pointed a trembling finger, first at Cassian, then at me. "This ain't over, he hissed, his voice venomous. "This is not over." He turned and shoved his way through the crowd, his younger, tattooed associate scrambling after him. They disappeared onto the street. The terminal went back to its normal hum. People turned back to their conversations. The show was over. I let out a breath I didn't even know I was holding. My knees felt weak, like they were made of water. I was still clutching the restraining order. My old life was in a duffel bag in a car I didn't own. My apartment was destroyed. A very dangerous man had just promised to come after me. But as I stood there on the concrete dock, the cold wind pulling at my hair, I looked at Cassian Ruggiero. He was watching the crowd, his face calm. My heart, which should have been pounding out of my chest, was slow. It was just beating, steady, and for the first time in my entire life, it was calm. My duffel bag, the one containing every single thing I owned in the world, looked pathetic sitting by the door of the suite at the Larkspur Grand. Cade had carried it up for me, and its grimy canvas and frayed straps were a stark, ugly contrast to the plush gray carpet. After Cassian and Cade left again, they had business to attend to. Following the terminal incident, I was alone, truly alone, on the 27th floor, with a man I didn't know guarding my door from the hallway. The first thing I did was shower. I stood under the scalding water for 20 minutes, the steam so thick I couldn't see the walls of the glass enclosure. I scrubbed my skin until it was red, washing off the smell of gable courts, of stale cigarettes, of the ferry terminal's diesel fumes, of fear. I was washing away the girl who scrubbed floors at 2 a.m. I didn't know who was left. When I stepped out, wrapped in a towel thick and soft as a cloud, I found a manila folder on the kitchen counter. My name was typed on the tab, Clark, Eden. My heart hammered. This was it, the contract. I opened it. Inside, there was no complex legal jargon, at least not on the first page. It was a work schedule. Employee Eden Clark. Assignment Harbor Haven Community Kitchen. Halcyon Point District hours 9:00 a.m. 4:00 p.m. Monday, Friday. Daylight. I would be working in the daylight, a normal job. No more graveyard shifts at the laundromat. No more pre-dawn scrubbing at the Spire. Then I saw the pay scale. I read the hourly rate, and my knees went weak. It was nearly double what I made at the Spire. It was enough to cover Mom's medication and rent and food and maybe, just maybe, I could re-enroll. I could save. But it was the last line item that made me stop breathing. Addendum Safety and Security, Bonus Hazard Clause, 125%. I read it again and again. 125%, not a fine, not a fee, not a deduction, a bonus. They weren't just paying me for my time. They were compensating me for the risk, the world I came from, the world of men like Bram Calder. You were penalized for being vulnerable. You were the one who lost your deposit. You were the one who paid. Here, in this single line of type, was a concept so foreign I could barely understand it. They were acknowledging the danger, and they were paying me for it. It was the first time in my entire life that my safety had been assigned a value. I sank onto one of the high stools at the counter, the thick towel clutched around me, and I cried, not from fear, like at the laundromat, but from a strange, painful, overwhelming sense of worth. I was dressed in a clean, spare uniform from my bag when Cassian returned. It was late afternoon. The fog had burned off, and the sun was hitting the glass wall, making the apartment warm. Let himself in. That quiet, expensive snick of the lock. I didn't jump. He was all business. The apartment has been leased in your name by the North Star Trust for 1 year, he said, not as a kindness, but as a fact. The first and last month's rent are paid. After that, it's deducted from your salary, but the rate is subsidized by the trust. You can afford it. He was giving me independence. He wasn't giving me a free ride. He was giving me a possible one. He placed a small, black plastic fob on the counter. It looked like the one Cade had. "This is for you," he said. "It's keyed to this suite. The elevator, the garage, and all the employee access doors at the Harbor Haven properties. Our doors will recognize you." I picked it up. It was light. It felt like a key to a fortress. "But," he continued, and his voice was firm, "your privacy is your privacy. The man in the hall has a key, but he will not use it unless he hears a clear sign of distress. Cade doesn't have a key. I don't have a key." He met my gaze. "This is your space. You are not a prisoner here. Eden, you are a resident. Access, not ownership. The distinction was everything." We spent the next hour at the kitchen island. He called it light media prep. "The Halcyon feed is buzzing," he said, scrolling through his own encrypted phone. "You're a mystery woman. The Ashfords and the Docklight Syndicate will try to use that. They will paint you as a mafia girlfriend, a liar, someone I'm using to smear them." "So what do I do?" I asked, my voice small. "I don't know how to fight that." "You don't." His answer was sharp. "You don't fight, you don't engage. If a blogger, a reporter, anyone with a camera asks you anything, you have 2 sentences. He made me repeat them. 1. I am a service employee for the Harbor Haven Foundation. 2. I have the right to remain silent. That's it. That's it. Don't defend me. Don't defend yourself. Don't get angry. Don't get scared. You are a worker. You have rights. That's the entire story. He was giving me a shield. Not a weapon, a shield. The room grew quiet. He was checking messages, his thumb moving with quick, deliberate strokes. I was supposed to be grateful and quiet. But the question that had been burning in my chest since the bell on the laundromat door jangled was too loud. Cassian. He looked up, his dark eyes focused. Why? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. That night, in the laundromat, you didn't know me. I was nobody. Just a girl scrubbing a floor. Why did you stop? Why? Why this? I gestured to the apartment, the fob, the new job. He looked away from me, toward the massive window. The city was spread out below us, indifferent and vast. For a long moment, he said nothing. I thought he was going to ignore me, to tell me it was just business. You didn't look like you were in trouble, he said finally, his voice flat. He had his hands on me. I was terrified. No, Cassian said, turning back to me. You were scared, but you weren't screaming. You weren't fighting. You were resigned. You were just taking it. Like you'd been taking it your whole life. Like you knew that's how it was. I flinched. He had seen it, the core of me, the part that just endured. That's not an answer, I said, my throat tight. He took a breath. His expression, usually so controlled, faltered. He looked haunted. My mother, he said. The two words hung in the air like stones. Before my father, before the Ruggiero name, meant what it means we were nothing. We lived in a one-room apartment by the cannery. She worked as a maid at the old Bayside Motel by Pier 4. He wasn't in the room with me anymore. He was somewhere else, somewhere dark and old. I was 6 years old, he said, his voice low, rhythmic. I used to wait in the hall while she cleaned. I wasn't allowed inside. I was sitting on the floor by the ice machine. A man came out of the room she was cleaning, a salesman, drunk. He was yelling at her, calling her names. Cassian's jaw tightened so hard a muscle jumped. He said she stole $1 from his nightstand. He threw his tip on the floor, right in a puddle of melted ice, and he made her pick it up. My hand instinctively went to my mouth. I just sat there, he said, his voice raw. I watched her get on her knees. I watched her cry. And nobody did a thing. The man just laughed and got in the elevator. He finally looked at me, and his eyes were black with a 6-year-old's fury. When I walked into that laundromat, when I saw that fat, sloppy piece of garbage with his hand on your wrist, and I saw your face, I wasn't there. I was 6 years old again, standing by the ice machine, and I swore to God I wasn't going to just stand in the hall this time. The silence in the room was absolute. It was the sound of a key turning in a lock I didn't even know was there. He hadn't saved me because I was special. He had saved me because he was... I didn't know what to say. I just looked down at my own wrist. The bulky gauze Kate had given me was gray and peeling. I went to the first aid kit on the counter and brought it to the sofa. I sat down and slowly, carefully, unwrapped my wrist. The bruise was fading. The angry purple had softened to a sickly map of yellow and green, Bram's thumbprint, a fading stain. I took out an antiseptic wipe and cleaned the skin, then put a small, square Band-Aid over the worst of it. I felt his eyes on me. When I looked up, he was watching my hands. His expression wasn't angry anymore. The hardness was gone. He just looked sad. He gave a single, slow nod, as if I had confirmed something for him. The heavy, emotional air was suffocating. I needed to move, to do something. Are you hungry? I asked. He blinked, as if pulled from a trance. What? Hungry, food. I gestured to the kitchen. I saw pasta in the pantry. I can make pasta. It's all I know how to make, really. A tiny, almost invisible smile touched his lips. I could eat. We ended up in the kitchen. It was ridiculous. Me, in my worn-out jeans and a faded t-shirt, and him, in his perfectly tailored slacks and a black Henley that probably cost more than my textbooks. He'd finally taken off his coat. It was a disaster. I couldn't figure out the sleek, buttonless induction stovetop. He couldn't find the can opener for the tomatoes. We searched for a colander for 10 minutes before finding it in a drawer within a drawer. I was stirring the sauce in a pan when he tried to put a lid on the pot of boiling water. He misjudged. The lid slipped, and a huge cloud of steam billowed up, scalding his hand. "Damn it," he hissed, yanking his hand back, shaking it violently in the air. And I laughed. It wasn't a giggle. It was a real, sharp, sudden bark of laughter. It just escaped. He froze, his hand in midair, and stared at me. He looked utterly bewildered, like a cat that had just seen a ghost. "I'm sorry," I said, still grinning, trying to stifle another laugh. "It's just you looked so human." A slow smile spread across his face. It was the first one I'd ever seen. It changed everything. It erased the hard lines, the shadows. For a second, he wasn't Cassian Ruggiero. He was just a man who'd burned his hand. "Don't tell the street I can cook," he said, his voice a low rumble. "Or, fail at it. It's bad for the brand." "Your secret is safe with me," I said. We ate the pasta sitting at the counter, straight from the bowls. It was basic, made with canned sauce and some dried basil we'd found. It was the best meal I had ever eaten in my life. We cleaned up together. He washed, I dried, and I noticed the rule. He was meticulously careful. He never brushed against me. When he handed me a wet bowl, he held it out, waiting for my hands to take it, his own fingers never touching mine. He maintained a bubble of space around me, a 2-foot-wide circle of respect. He wasn't Bram. He was the antidote to Bram. He was giving me all the space, all the choice. He would not touch me unless I moved first. When we were done, I found myself looking at the wall of books. My torn textbooks were stacked neatly on a lower shelf. Maid, I assumed. But my eyes landed on a thick hardcover near the top. Street peace negotiations that work. The old Eden, the Gable Courts. Eden would have just stared, would have been too intimidated to ask. The new Eden, the one with the 125% safety clause, just pointed. "Can I?" I stopped. I would not apologize for wanting something. "I'd like to read that, if it's all right." He looked at the book, then at me. "It's dense, not exactly a beach read." "I made it through 2 semesters of organic chemistry," I said. "I think I can handle it." He nodded, a flicker of that smile returning. He pulled the heavy book from the shelf and handed it to me. "Be my guest." Later, an exhaustion so deep it felt like it was in my bones finally claimed me. The adrenaline from the ferry, the emotional weight of his story, the simple, shocking normalcy of making pasta. It all crashed down. I said goodnight and went to the guest bedroom, a room larger and more beautiful than any I had ever slept in. I came out an hour later, unable to sleep, needing water. The main room was dark. He was gone. The apartment was silent, but for the hum of the city far below. On the kitchen counter, next to the heavy book I'd left there, was a single, square, yellow sticky note. His handwriting was dark, strong, and angular. It wasn't a long note. It was just 4 words. "Just read page 47. I read page 47. I read it 3 times. It wasn't about negotiation. It was titled, "Bracing for Kinetic Contact." It was a cold, technical description of how to survive a car crash or a physical assault. Plant both feet, press the spine against the seat, exhale fully on impact to protect the ribs. Make the body a small, hard, unmoving target. Do not scream. Control the breath. The breath is the only thing you own in that second. I went to sleep with the words running through my head. Control the breath. My new life began on a Monday. Cade drove me to the Harbor Haven Community Kitchen in Halcyon Point. It was a low brick building, clean and bright, right on the water. It smelled like baking bread and strong coffee, not bleach and despair. The work was hard, but it was good work. I wasn't scrubbing floors in the dead of night. I was chopping vegetables, serving hot stew to dock workers, and wiping down tables in a dining room full of sunlight and conversation. The men and women who came in were tired, their hands rough, their faces lined with salt and sun. They looked at me with curiosity, but also with a shy respect. The rumors, of course, were everywhere. The Halcyon feed had become obsessed. The laundromat girl, they called me. Ruggiero's new shadow. There were memes. My face, grainy from the laundromat security cam. photoshopped onto movie posters, the Maid and the mob. It made my skin crawl. One afternoon, a young woman with a press badge from a local blog cornered me by the bread ovens. "Eden, is it true, mister? Ruggiero moved you to the Larkspur Grand. Is it true he's protecting you from the Ashfords?" My heart hammered. I saw the camera in her hand. The old me would have stammered, apologized, and probably started crying. The new me took a breath. "I am a service employee for the Harbor Haven Foundation," I said, my voice flat and steady. Her smile faltered. "But can't you just confirm? I have the right to remain silent." I said. I picked up my tray of clean bowls and walked away. My hands weren't even shaking. Life settled into a strange rhythm. By day, I was Eden, the kitchen worker. By night, I was Eden, the student, alone in my fortress on the 27th floor, studying my salvaged textbooks and reading Street Piece from cover to cover. Cassian was a ghost. He'd text me, "Everything all right?" I'd text back, "Yes." He was busy. Kate had let slip that the Ashford family had officially filed their riverfront renovation papers with the city. The clock was ticking. In response, the Docklight Syndicate got desperate. The inspections on the poor in the river wards intensified. Shopkeepers were fined into closure. Renters were discovered to have code violations. And Bram Calder's name was being whispered again. He wasn't with the city anymore. Of course. He'd been fired. Now. According to the dock gossip, he was working private security, funded by a shell company called Pacific Crest Brokerage, a company Cassian was quietly, methodically taking apart on paper. The true escalation came on a Thursday night. The Beirut Market was an open-air night market under the freeway, a place where you could get fresh fish, cheap vegetables, and amazing Filipino street food. It was a lifeline for the river wards. It was loud and bright and alive. I was there, my new encrypted phone in my pocket, buying groceries for the week. I heard the shouting first, then the sound of glass breaking. A stall at the far end, a family-run produce stand, burst into flames, then another. People were screaming, running. It wasn't an accident. 3 men in dark hoodies were running, throwing something as they went. I didn't run away. I ran toward it, or at least to the side, ducking behind a fish stall. I pulled out the phone. My hands were shaking, but I hit record. I filmed the men as they ran, their faces covered, as they jumped into a dark pickup truck with no plates. I zoomed in, capturing the ugly, custom decal on the back window, a snarling wolf. I sent the video to Cassian. 2 minutes later, he replied with one word, "Home now." Cassian gave the footage to his lawyers and to a single, fiercely independent reporter known for digging into City Hall, The Fire, which would have been a 2-line story about gang trouble, became a front-page accusation. That's when the letter arrived. It was delivered by a courier to the Larkspur Grand, addressed to me. It was an official summons from the Crown Point Metropolitan Tribunal. They were holding an emergency community hearing on the Ashford project. "Due to your status as a displaced resident and a material witness to associated disturbances," it read, "you are invited to give a 3-minute statement as a concerned citizen." I felt sick. "Invited," I said to Cassian, holding the paper. "It sounds like a choice, but it's not, is it?" "It's a choice," he said, standing by the glass wall. "You don't have to. You can stay here. You can be safe." "But if I don't, they win, don't they, the Ashfords? They'll say the community is silent." "Yes." I looked at my ripped textbooks. I thought of Mrs. Aaron's terrified eye behind the chain. I thought of the family whose fruit stand was now a pile of ash. "I'll do it," I said. What do I say?" "You don't say what I tell you to," he said, turning to me. "You don't say what the lawyers tell you to. You just tell the truth. Tell them what you saw, what you smelled. Tell them what they took from you." The day of the hearing, the air was heavy with rain. It was me, Cade, and Cassian. Cade was driving the sedan. Cassian sat in the back with me. He was wearing a dark suit. I was wearing the only professional-looking thing I owned, a black skirt and a white blouse. We were 5 blocks from the tribunal when Cade spoke. "We have a tale," he said, his voice calm. He was looking at the side mirror. "Black pickup, Lifted, no plates. It's the truck from the market. My heart stopped. Cassian's hand tightened on the armrest. Eden, put your seatbelt on. Make sure it's tight, he said. Cade didn't speed up. He just made a sharp, sudden right turn, then an immediate left, diving into the mouth of the 7th runoff tunnel. It was a service conduit, not meant for public traffic. The air was instantly cold, the tunnel lit only by flashing yellow maintenance lights that cast long, monstrous shadows. Water dripped from the ceiling, a constant echoing plip, plip, plip. "Kada," Cassian said, his voice low. I know, he's still there. I looked out the back window. The truck's headlights filled the tunnel, blinding me. It was gaining. It was so much bigger than our sedan. Cade accelerated, the tires hissing on the wet pavement. We came to a junction where the tunnel split. The truck appeared from the other junction, cutting us off. They had planned this. It slammed into our rear quarter panel. The sound was a deafening shriek of metal. The car spun, the back end fishtailing wildly. I screamed. My world dissolved into a blur of concrete and flashing yellow lights. Eden, Cassian's voice. It wasn't a yell. It was a command, sharp, cold, and absolute. Page 47 now. The words cut through my panic like a scalpel. Control the breath. I slammed my head back against the headrest. I planted my feet flat on the floor. I gripped the front seat. The truck was coming again, bearing down on my door. Exhale on impact. The truck hit us. The world exploded. The sound was a physical blow, the car lifting and slamming against the tunnel wall. I let out all the air in my lungs, a great shuddering whoosh. The impact rattled my bones, but nothing broke. Cade was fighting the wheel, his knuckles white. The car was still moving. The truck was right on us, pinning us against the wall, scraping, grinding. Hold on, Cade grunted. He wrenched the wheel, turning into the truck, then hit the gas. The sedan shot forward, out of the pincer, its side a mangled ruin of sparks. The truck had overshot. Cade didn't slow down. He floored it, and we rocketed out of the tunnel, bursting into the gray. Rainy daylight, leaving the black truck behind in the darkness. We swerved onto a side street. Cade pulled over, the engine ticking, the car groaning. I was shaking. I was shaking so violently I couldn't feel my hands. I fumbled with the seatbelt clip, but my fingers were useless. It's okay, Cassian said. He was leaning over me, his own face pale. His hand hovered over mine, his fingers just brushing my own, steadying them. You're okay. Breathe. Eden, you're okay. I finally got the belt undone. I looked at the mangled side of the car, at the spiderweb cracks in my window. A hysterical little laugh bubbled up in my throat. I'm going to be charging hazard pay for this, I whispered. Cassian looked at me, a strange, fierce light in his eyes. He almost smiled. I'll pay it with peace, he said. The tribunal hall was packed. It was a coliseum. On one side, the Ashford family and their team of lawyers, all crisp suits and smug expressions. On the other, the people of the River Ward's misses. Aaron, the family from the Beirut market, dock workers, laundromat attendants, my people. My name was called. I walked to the podium. My knees were water. I looked at the panel of judges. I looked at the Ashfords. Then I looked at the crowd. My name is Eden Clark, I said, my voice shaking. But the microphone picked it up. I lived at Gable Courts 3 nights ago. I was invited to speak here 2 hours ago. The men who burned down the Beirut market tried to kill me and my colleagues on the way to this building. A gasp went through the room. The Ashford lawyers were suddenly on their feet, yelling, "Objection, no proof." They want to talk about proof, I said, my voice rising, the fear burning away, leaving something hard and bright. I'm the proof. My proof is the smell of cheap cigarettes in a hallway while a man breaks down my door. My proof is my nursing textbooks, ripped to shreds because I said no to a fake inspector. My proof is the right to come home from a late shift without being grabbed in the dark, and the right to live without being told I am in the way. I pointed at the Ashfords. You say this is renovation. You say it's progress. But you are using men who smell like smoke and carry crowbars. You are using dirty money and fear. You think we are invisible. You think we are just background in your perfect new city. I took a deep breath. I looked at Mrs. Aaron. We are not invisible. We are not just background. We are not furniture to be cleared from your path. Dead silence. The room was so quiet I could hear the rain on the roof. Then, from the back, a single person started to clap, then another and another. Within seconds, the entire community section was on its feet, the applause echoing like thunder. The fallout was immediate. The hashtags Hands Off Eden and Harbor Belongs To's were trending in Port Halcyon before I even left the building. The tribunal, stunned, ordered a temporary injunction on the Ashford project. But the opposition got ugly. That night, the Halcyon feed ran a news story. A commentator, clearly on Ashford's payroll, was on screen. This entire spectacle was a fraud, the woman sneered. This Eden Clark isn't a concerned citizen. She's the paid mistress of Cassian Ruggiero, a known criminal. He's using this girl, this laundromat maid, to wage a mob war for territory. I was sitting at the counter, watching the clip on my laptop. Paid mistress, laundromat maid. The words stung, hot and sharp, undoing all the strength I'd felt at the podium. Cassian walked into the room. He saw what I was watching. He saw the tears welling in my eyes. He didn't say a word. He just walked over, his face grim, and closed the laptop. "It's not true," I whispered, hating how weak I sounded. They're making me his property." He crouched down in front of me, so his eyes were level with mine. He didn't touch me. "Let them," he said, his voice a low, fierce rumble. "Let them make noise about me. It's what I'm built for. I can take it. The noise, the mud, it's my business. You..." He looked at me, and his eyes were burning. "You just keep that fire, the one I saw at the podium. Don't you let them put it out. You let me take the noise. You keep the fire." I stood on the balcony, letting the wind try to peel the skin from my bones. It was a different kind of cold up here. On the 27th floor, it was thin, sharp, and merciless. It came straight off the black expanse of the harbor, carrying a clean, metallic taste. Down below, Port Halcyon was a carpet of fractured glitter, beautiful and silent. The city lights didn't make a sound. The wind whipped my hair across my face, stinging my eyes, but I didn't bother to push it away. I pulled the thin wool sweater I'd found in the guest closet tighter, but it was useless. This cold wasn't on my skin. It was inside me, a chill left over from the tribunal, from the accident in the tunnel, and from the new, ugly words being plastered all over the Halcyon feed. Paid mistress, laundromat maid. Cassian had told me to let him take the noise, but the noise was loud. It was the same noise that had followed me my whole life, the whispers that said I was small, that I was property, that I was furniture. The heavy glass door slid open behind me. The sound was smooth, almost silent, but I felt the shift in the air. I didn't turn around. "You'll freeze." His voice was a low rumble, cutting through the high-pitched whistle of the wind. He didn't come right up to me. I heard a ceramic clink on the metal railing, a good 3 feet away. "I made cocoa," he said. I finally turned, and he was standing there, his shirt sleeves rolled up, his dark hair a little messy from the wind. He was holding one heavy mug and had set the other down for me, respecting the bubble of space he always kept between us. Steam curled from the mugs, ripped away instantly by the gusts. "You made it?" I asked, my voice thin. "This time," and he said, a shadow of that small smile in his voice. "I successfully avoided any third-degree burns. I'm learning." I stepped toward the offering. My fingers were numb as I wrapped them around the mug. The ceramic was hot, a solid, grounding heat that sank into my palms. I took a sip. It was dark, rich, and not too sweet. It was perfect. We stood there for a long time, not speaking. We just drank, watching the distant, silent crawl of traffic on the bridges. He wasn't demanding I talk, or peppering me with questions. He wasn't trying to fix the ugly things the internet was saying. He was just standing there, in the cold, taking the noise. They called me a maid, I whispered, the wind stealing the words. Like it's the worst thing a person can be. Like it's dirty. It's how they fight, Eden, he said, his gaze fixed on the horizon. They can't beat your words, so they try to erase your worth. They try to put you back on your knees. I've spent my whole life on my knees, I said, the words tasting like ash, or hiding. The warmth of the cocoa was unlocking something deep inside, something frozen. When I was a kid, maybe 8 or 9, my mom and I were always moving, always one step behind the rent. We had this one landlord, Mr. Pierce. He was a small man, but he filled up the whole hallway. He'd wait for my mom to get home from her shift at the diner, and he'd stand in the doorway, blocking it. He never hit her. He'd just talk. My grip on the mug tightened. He'd ask her how she was going to make the payment. He'd ask her if she was lonely. He'd ask her if she could be nicer. And she would just shrink. She'd get so small. And I learned to be invisible. I'd go into the little pantry closet, behind the canned goods, and I'd turn off the light. I'd hold my breath, praying he would just go away. I hadn't meant to say any of that. The confession hung in the cold air, raw and shameful. I braced myself for his pity, for the "I'm sorry" or the uncomfortable silence. But Cassian didn't speak. He just turned his body slightly, leaning his hip against the railing, his side to me. He kept his eyes on the city. He took his free hand, the one not holding his mug, and he just placed it on the cold steel railing between us. It wasn't a gesture. It wasn't an invitation. He just rested it there, palm up. A still, open, patient presence. He wasn't offering to fix my past. He was just sitting with me in it. He was giving my story the one thing I'd never had in that pantry a witness. A sudden, violent gust of wind howled across the balcony. It slammed into me, a physical blow, and I stumbled. I shivered, a deep, bone-rattling shudder. Without thinking, I moved. I took one step sideways, into the shelter of his body, into the lee of the wind. As I did, my hand, the one not holding the mug, brushed against my fingertips grazed the back of his hand, the one resting open on the rail. It was like touching a live wire, a quiet shock of heat, skin on skin. I froze. It was the first time I'd crossed the line, the first time I'd stepped inside that 2-foot circle of respect he had so carefully built around me. My fingers were just resting there, a feather-light touch, on the back of his hand. It was an accident, and then it wasn't. I left them there. It was a question. It was an answer. It was me, after a lifetime of hiding, finally reaching out in the dark. He didn't move for a full second. I felt the muscles in his hand tense under my touch. Then, very slowly, he turned his head. His eyes found mine. The distant, analytical gaze was gone. The shadows of his mother's story, the hard fury from the tunnel, it all vanished. His eyes were dark, so dark they seemed to pull in all the light from the city, and they were focused entirely, completely on me. He wasn't looking at my mouth. He was looking at me. And in that look, he was asking 1,000 silent questions. Are you sure? Is this what you want? Is this safe for you? My heart, which I thought was frozen, gave a single, heavy, painful thud. It wasn't fear. It was arrival. I gave a small, almost imperceptible nod, just once. He set his mug down on the railing. The sound was loud in the sudden silence. Slowly, as if afraid I would bolt, he raised his other hand. He didn't reach for my body. He brought his hand to my face. His palm was warm. His fingers were slightly rough, the calluses a surprise. He cupped my cheek, his thumb stroking the sensitive skin of my cheekbone, just beneath my eye. It wasn't a grab, like Bram's. It wasn't a claim. It was an offering. He leaned in. He moved so slowly. He was giving me every second, every millisecond to change my mind. You can pull away, Eden. You can say no. You can go back to being safe. I didn't pull away. I leaned into the warmth of his palm. I set my own mug down on the railing. My free hand, the one that had been touching his, came up. My fingers curled into the thick, dark fabric of his coat collar. I wasn't pulling him closer. I was just holding on, anchoring him, anchoring myself. "Don't rush," I whispered, the words trembling, almost lost to the wind. "I won't," he whispered back. His voice was thick, raw. And then his lips touched mine. It was soft. It was hesitant. For a second, it was just a gentle press, a question. And when I didn't move, when I breathed out, my own lips softened, and I leaned in a fraction of an inch. The kiss deepened. It was nothing like I could have ever imagined. It wasn't the desperate, crushing assault I saw in movies. It was warm and sure and impossibly tender. It tasted of dark chocolate and the cold night air. It felt like the end of a long, long fall. My fingers tightened on his coat. His other arm came around my waist, his hand splaying wide and firm against the small of my back, steadying me. His elbow brushed the railing, and I felt him instinctively pull me closer, a solid, protective motion that shielded me from the cold emptiness of the 27-story drop. He was grounding me. When we finally broke apart, we were both breathless. He didn't let go. I didn't let go. He just rested his forehead against mine. I could feel the thrum of his heart hammering against my chest. Or maybe it was mine. I couldn't tell where I ended, and he began. The wind howled around us, but we were in the quiet eye of the storm. A small, shaky laugh escaped me. My heart. I breathed. "It's so fast." "I know," he said, his own voice rough. He let out a short, quiet laugh, his breath warm on my skin. Mine too. We stood there, foreheads touching, rooted to the spot. He pulled back just enough to see my eyes. His were serious, the darkness in them full of a fierce, new light. "Eden," he said, his voice low and firm. "If this is too much, if it's too fast, I will stop, right now, no questions asked." I looked at him, the man who had seen my humiliation and given me power, the man who had listened to my shame and given me respect, the man who had built a fortress of boundaries around me, so strong that I was finally brave enough to step outside of them myself. "I'll tell you," I said, my voice finally steady. "I promise. I'll tell you." He kissed me again. This time it was deeper. This time I wasn't scared. This time I met him halfway. The wind was too cold. He put his hand on my back and gently guided me inside. The slide of the heavy glass door cut off the city's roar, leaving us in the warm, dim silence of the living room. The only light was the soft, orange glow from the electric fireplace. He didn't pull me toward the bedroom. He didn't push me against the wall. He just held me. I wrapped my arms around his waist, turning my face into his shoulder, breathing in the scent of him. It wasn't cologne. It was just clean, like iron and wool and the cold night air. He held me tightly, one hand spreading wide across my back, the other hand tangling in my hair, cradling the back of my head. It was an embrace so total, so secure. I felt like my bones might dissolve. We stayed like that for a long time, just breathing each other in. Then his hand in my hair gently tilted my chin up. He kissed me again and again. Long, slow, exploring kisses that built a low, steady fire deep in my stomach. His lips moved from my mouth to my jaw, to the sensitive, fluttering pulse in my neck. I shivered, but it had nothing to do with the cold. "Cassian," I whispered, the name a new, unfamiliar shape. "I'm here," he murmured against my skin. His hands were impossibly respectful. Even now, they moved over the wool of my sweater, tracing my shoulders, my arms, the curve of my spine. There was no fumbling, no desperate grabbing. It was a slow, deliberate mapping. It was a promise. Every touch was a question, and my own hands, moving over the hard muscle of his back, were the answer. The fire was building, but so was the exhaustion. The adrenaline from the tribunal, the terror from the tunnel, the deep emotional weight of his story and mine, it all came crashing down at once. The tension, the fear, the passion, it left me weak. My knees felt like they were about to buckle. He felt it. He felt the exact moment the tension drained out of me, leaving nothing but weary trust. He pulled back, his eyes searching mine in the dim light. He saw the fatigue. He didn't push. He didn't take advantage of the moment. He just saw. He led me to the long, gray sofa. "Sit," he said, his voice soft. I sat down on the impossibly soft cushions. I was asleep before I even knew it. My body, finally understanding it, was allowed to just shut down. I drifted, I was aware, in a distant, hazy way, of something being draped over me. It was the cashmere throw, the heavy, soft one from the back of the chair. I felt a weight settle on the coffee table nearby. I surfaced, just enough to crack my eyes open. My vision was blurry. He hadn't left. He hadn't gone to the guest room. He hadn't gotten on the sofa with me. He had pulled over one of the heavy wooden armchairs from the dining table. He was sitting in it, across from the sofa, just sitting, watching me. His arms were resting on the armrests, his posture relaxed but alert, a guardian, a sentry. He was taking the night shift, just like he had in his mother's hallway. A wave of gratitude so profound it actually hurt washed over me. "Cassian," I mumbled, my voice thick with sleep. "Go to sleep, Eden," he said, his voice a soft rumble in the dark. I reached out my hand from under the warm blanket. I didn't say anything. I just held it out, palm up. He looked at my hand for a long second, then he leaned forward, bracing his elbows on his knees, and took it. His grip was warm, strong, and completely enfolded mine. I fell asleep, not the thin, anxious drifting of Gable Courts, but a deep, true, black and dreamless sleep. I wasn't hiding in the pantry, I was anchored. I woke up to the smell of coffee. I was alone on the sofa. The cashmere throw was tucked neatly around my shoulders. The armchair was empty. Sunlight was streaming through the glass wall, filling the apartment with bright, clean light. He was gone. On the coffee table, next to a steaming mug of black coffee, was a single, square, yellow sticky note. I picked it up, his strong, angular handwriting. It wasn't a long note. It wasn't a promise of forever. It was something better. It was a statement of fact. "Your boundaries are my compass." The note on the coffee table was a promise. "Your boundaries are my compass." It was the most romantic thing anyone had ever said to me, but a compass only works if you're moving. And we were moving. The days at the Harbor Haven kitchen were my new normal. The whispers about me had changed. After the tribunal hearing and the car attack, Laundromat Girl was gone. Now, I was just Eden. The dock workers, the families, the people from the river wards, they didn't see me as a victim or a mistress. They saw me as one of them, the one who had stood up and spoken. Cassian and I, we were different. The line he had so carefully drawn was gone, erased by a kiss in the wind. But he still held back. He was still waiting, still letting me set the pace. He was a man who understood that trust. Once shattered, had to be rebuilt like a cathedral, one stone at a time. He was focused. He and Cade were working late, digging into the Ashford money. Cade found the artery. He told me one night, we were in the suite. The city lights spread out below us. He had his laptop open on the island. The Ashfords are clean on the surface, but they donate millions to this. He pointed to a logo on the screen, a peaceful-looking dove over a pair of clasped hands. The Seaboard Mission Fund, a charity for displaced maritime workers. A charity. A washing machine, Cassian said, his voice flat. The fund receives millions from Ashford's corporate accounts. It then moves that money in small, complex transfers to Pacific Crest Brokerage, the same shell company that hired Bram Calder. So Ashford pays the charity, I said, following the line, and the charity pays the Docklight Syndicate to burn down markets and kick in doors. Soft violence, he nodded, his face grim. All paid for with a tax-deductible donation. It's clean, it's brilliant, and it's about to get messy. He was right. The temporary injunction on the Ashford project had made them desperate. Gunner Pike, having failed in the tunnel, was given a new task. Cade got the tip from one of our contacts at the docks. They're planning a public lesson, Cassian told me, his voice tight. We were in the small back office of the kitchen. It was noon. The lunch rush was hitting its peak. What does that mean? I asked, a cold knot forming in my stomach. It means Gunnar is coming here. Right now, at peak time, he wants to do what he failed to do at the ferry terminal. He wants to humiliate you, in front of the community, in front of your people. The old, familiar fear tasted like copper in my mouth. Lock the doors. We have to call the police. No. Cassian's eyes were like dark ice. This isn't a place for violence. This is a haven. We don't meet them with guns. We meet them with process. He tapped his phone. I'm not the only one who got a tip this morning. What did you do? I executed a legal wind punch, he said. I had an anonymous call placed to the Urban Ethics Committee 2 hours ago, a complaint about dangerous overcrowding and potential food safety violations at this address. I stared at him. You called inspectors on your own kitchen. They're due in 5 minutes, he said, checking his watch. At the exact same time, Jenna, that independent reporter who loves our story, is scheduled to arrive for a follow-up piece on community impact. And you, Eden, he looked at me, his gaze intense. You're the acting kitchen spokesperson. What? Crisis response. You know the script. You're not a victim. You're a manager. You are calm. You are in control. Before I could even process it, the front door opened. 2 people in crisp city logo polo shirts walked in, clipboards in hand. Urban Ethics Committee, one of them announced. We're here for a spot inspection. The kitchen staff froze. The line of people waiting for food murmured. Of course, I said, stepping forward, my heart hammering. We welcome the committee's oversight. The back door opened. Jenna, the reporter, and her cameraman. Eden, great, you're here. We just wanted to get a few words on. She stopped, seeing the inspectors. The cameraman, sensing tension, raised his camera and the bright white light clicked on, flooding the room. And then the front doors slammed open, banging against the wall. Gunnar Pike, and he was flanked by 4 of his men, including the one with the broken kite tattoo. They sauntered in, smelling of stale smoke and arrogance, trying to fill the room. The entire dining hall went dead silent. Gunnar saw the inspectors. He saw the reporter. He saw the camera light. His sneer faltered. This was not the undefended target he had been promised. We're, just here for lunch, he snarled, trying to recover. This is a community kitchen. Pike, a man in the line said, a big dock worker named Sal. You don't get to cut. Sign says family zone, no shoving. Another woman pointed. Kate had put those signs up last week. Can you read? Or did they not teach that where you're from? A nervous laugh rippled through the crowd. Gunnar's face turned a deep, blotchy red. He was being humiliated. He was losing control. Hands off our kitchen, someone shouted from the back. Hands off Eden. The chant started. Hands off, hands off. Gunnar was trapped. The camera was on him. The inspectors were watching him. He had to do something. He lunged forward, not at me, but at the man with the tattoo. Get me some food, goes, he yelled, and shoved him. The thug, desperate to follow orders, stumbled forward and came right at me, trying to get to the serving line. Out of the way, Maid, he spat, and he shoved me. Hard. His hand connected with my shoulder. I stumbled back, crashing into a cart of clean trays. The clatter was deafening in the sudden, absolute silence. The chanting stopped. The inspectors looked up from their clipboards. The camera zoomed in on my face. A shadow moved. Cassian had been leaning against the wall by the office, invisible. Now, he was right behind me. A solid, unmovable presence. The thug, his confidence back, tried to push past Cassian. I said, get out of the... Cassian didn't hit him. He didn't even tense. He just brought one hand up, palm flat, and placed it on the man's chest, a block, a simple, legal, nonviolent stop. The thug hit Cassian's hand and just stopped. Cassian leaned in, his voice not a yell, not a whisper, but a cold, clear, resonant question that filled every corner of the room. Who just touched her? The line, the same 4 words from the laundromat, but then it had been a question of discovery. Now it was an execution. The thug's eyes went wide. He looked at Cassian, he looked at the camera, he looked at the 2 city inspectors, who were now diligently writing on their clipboards. He had just assaulted an employee in front of city officials, and a reporter. He dropped his hand. His face went pale. Sorry, he stammered. He actually backed away. Gunner Pike saw it. He saw the entire room turn against him. He saw his muscle back down. He was done. "This ain't over," he screamed, his voice cracking. "This ain't over." He turned and stormed out the door, his crew practically running to follow him. The kitchen was silent for a beat, and then someone clapped. Then the whole room erupted in applause. Cade, who had been standing by the front door the entire time, just lowered his phone. He'd been recording. He stepped outside, his gaze tracking the beat-up truck the crew piled into. He zoomed in on the license plate. "Got a point mark on the vehicle," he murmured, stepping back inside as Cassian joined him. "We'll track it." That night, the suite at the Larkspur felt like a war room. "They were sloppy," Cade said, his laptop open on the island. "They dumped the truck. But the point mark, the one with the tattoo, he used his personal phone. We tracked it." A map of the city appeared, a red line snaking through the industrial district. He went to a bar owned by Pacific Crest, but first he stopped here. He zoomed in. Data Mend Storage, off the old rail spur, a 24-hour self-storage facility. He was inside for less than 5 minutes. "He was making a drop," Cassian said, his voice quiet. Cade typed. A corporate registration file appeared. Data Mend Storage. The property is owned by a holding company, which is, in turn, wholly owned by the Seaboard Mission Fund. My blood ran cold. Ashford's fake charity. "It's where they're keeping the paper." Cassian said, "The real ledgers. The cash payout receipts, the direct link between Ashford's donations and Gunner Pike's payroll." "So we break in?" I asked, my voice small. "No," Cassian said, his eyes hard. "We're done with shadows. We do this in the light, Cade. Send the tip." "Anonymous tip from a disgruntled Seaboard employee," Cade recited. "I'll have a civil search warrant from the tribunal in the hands of Aurelia Legal Aid by 3 a.m. "Good," Cassian said. "The auditors go in at 4. "Wait," I said. They both turned to me. "I'm going with them." "And absolutely not," Cassian said, his voice absolute. "This is a legal raid, Eden, but it's still a raid. It's not safe." "You don't understand," I said, stepping forward. "I know those places. I used to clean a data mend facility. Their storage manifests, they're a nightmare. It's all color codes and numerical sequences designed to be confusing. The auditors, they'll spend days just trying to find the right aisle. Ashford's lawyers will have the warrant quashed for overreach before they find a single piece of paper." I looked him in the eye. "I'm small, I'm quiet, I know how to read those manifests. I can get them in and out in minutes, not days. This is process. Right, this is my part of it." Cassian stared at me, his jaw tight. He hated it. He hated every part of it. He looked at Cade, silently asking for a veto. Cade just gave a single, slow nod. "She's right, boss. They'll bury the auditors in paperwork. She's the only one who can cut through it. It's the fastest way." Cassian turned back to me, his eyes full of a fierce, protective conflict. He let out a slow breath. "Fine, but you will wear a vest. You will not be seen. You will not speak to anyone but me and the audit team. Cade will be on the perimeter. I will be with you. And if I say the word run, you don't ask why, you just go. Is that clear?" "Clear," I said. At 3:30 in the morning, the Data Mend storage facility was a concrete tomb, lit by buzzing, yellow fluorescent lights. It smelled of dust and old paper. Cade was a ghost, melting into the shadows of the loading dock. I was wearing a thin, hard panel vest under my black hoodie. It felt stiff and wrong. Cassian, flanked by 2 tribunal marshals and 2 forensic accountants from Aurelia Legale, served the warrant to a terrified-looking night manager. The manager unlocked the main archive vault. The door rolled back, revealing a canyon of floor-to-ceiling metal shelves, disappearing into the gloom. It was a library from hell, holding tens of thousands of identical, color-coded cardboard boxes. One of the accountants let out a low whistle. "This'll take a week." "No, it won't," I said, my voice barely a whisper. I scanned the manifest on the wall. Seaboard Mission Fund. Primary code is deep green. Financial subledgers are a yellow stripe. We're looking for fiscal years 2024 and 2025. They'll be on aisle G, high shelves, section 4. They all stared at me. Cassian nodded. "Follow her." I led them, my sneakers silent on the concrete. The air was cold, still. I found aisle G. There, I pointed. High up. Green-yellow, G417. A marshal climbed the rolling ladder. He handed down 3 heavy, dusty boxes. We took them to the freezing, sterile front office. The accountants put on gloves and opened the first box. For an hour, the only sound was the dry shoosh of paper. "Got it," one of them said, his voice flat. "Transfer logs. Seaboard to Pacific Crest. Matches the deposits Cade found." "And here," the other said, holding up a ledger. "Cash withdrawal authorizations, large sums, signed out to G. Pike." It was the gun. It was smoking. The link was direct, undeniable. Ashford was paying Gunner. I was looking in the last box. It wasn't ledgers. It was invoices. Contracts. My heart stopped. I pulled out a sheet of paper. "Eden, what is it?" Cassian asked. I held it up, my hand shaking. It's an invoice from Eden Clark Cleaning Services for $10,000 for biohazard removal at a warehouse I've never even heard of. I dug deeper. There were dozens of them, ghost contracts, fake invoices, all under my name. They were faking them, I whispered. The room starting to spin. They were using my name this whole time. They were laundering the payout money through me. The pieces slammed together with the force of a physical blow. The laundromat girl slanders, the paid mistress comments. They weren't just insults. They were building a case. If I had been arrested, I said, looking up at him, my blood turning to ice. If you hadn't found me at the laundromat, this is what the police would have found. They were framing me. They were going to pin all of it on me. The rage that boiled up in me was white hot. It burned away all the fear, all the exhaustion. They hadn't just tried to take my home. They were trying to steal my name. "I'll kill them," I whispered, my hands crushing the invoice. A hand, warm and strong, covered mine on the table. It stopped my hands from shaking. Cassian's. I looked up. His face was calm, his eyes cold and focused. "Don't," he said, his voice low and absolute. "They're lies, and we're going to burn them." He gestured to the boxes, to the auditors who were now bagging the ledgers as evidence. "We're just going to use the truth to do it, not gasoline." The mainstream news was slow, as always. The Port Halcyon Chronicle, in its infinite, cautious wisdom, ran a hesitant story on page A5. It used words like alleged and irregularities when discussing the Seaboard Mission Fund. It was weak, watery, and useless. But the Halcyon Feed the Feed was a wildfire. Jenna, the independent reporter, didn't hesitate. Her headline was a punch. Ashford Fund affront Eden Clark framed with fake invoices. She posted the ledger numbers. She posted the transfer codes Cade had found. She posted a redacted image of one of the ghost invoices, the ones with my name on them. The internet, which had been so quick to call me a mistress, was now my defender. The comment section was a tidal wave of fury, all of it aimed at the Ashfords. The story was simple, clean, and undeniable. The rich family had framed the poor girl. It was too clean. The Ashfords didn't wait 24 hours. Their counterattack was surgical. They didn't try to deny the ledgers. They didn't try to threaten Jenna. They pivoted, and they aimed every single cannon they had right at me. Their army of lawyers started clarifying the story with rival gossip sites. The narrative shifted with sickening speed. I wasn't an innocent victim anymore. I was a willing participant. I wasn't a paid mistress. That was last week's news. Too simple. Too weak. No, the new story was much, much better. I was, according to an anonymous source close to the Ruggiero operation, Cassian's new power broker. They claimed I had orchestrated the entire thing, that Eden Clark, a highly manipulative figure, had faked the laundromat attack to get Cassian's attention, that I had used his muscle and his resources to clear out the Docklight Syndicate so he could take over their territory. The ghost invoices weren't a frame-up. They were my payroll. I was Lady Macbeth in a cleaner's uniform. It was brilliant, and it was destroying me. It hurt more than being called a maid. Mistress had made me weak. Power broker made me monstrous. But they both did the same thing. They made me invisible. They erased Eden. They made me nothing more than a reflection, a shadow, an attachment to a powerful man. The fire I'd felt at the tribunal, the white-hot rage I'd felt in that storage unit, it all shriveled, leaving a cold, sick nausea. I looked in the mirror in the vast, silent bathroom of the Larkspur Grand. I was wearing a clean, soft robe. I was safe. I was sleeping through the night. I was eating 3 meals a day. But the girl staring back, who was she? Cassian came in late. The apartment was dark. I was standing by the glass wall, watching the rain begin to trace its way down the 27th floor window. "They're turning me into you," I said to his reflection in the glass. He stopped in the entryway, his coat still on. "It's noise. Eden, we knew they'd do this." "No," I turned to face him. "It's more than noise. It's working. Because I look at myself, and I don't know where I stop and your protection begins anymore." My voice was thin, reedy. Who am I? If you hadn't walked into that laundromat, Cassian, who would I be? I'd be in jail, or worse. Everything I am right now, this apartment, this job, my safety, the fact that I'm still breathing, it's all from you. The question I was terrified to ask finally broke free, raw and desperate. Who am I without you? I wanted him to lie. I wanted him to grab me, to kiss me, to tell me I was strong and smart and amazing. He didn't. He took off his coat, his movements slow, deliberate. He hung it in the closet. He walked over to the kitchen counter, putting a wall of dark granite between us. He was quiet for a long, long time, his back to me. "You know about my mother," he said finally, his voice low. "The Maid, the Bayside Motel." "Yes," I whispered. "The man who made her pick up the dollar." "Yeah, that's the story I tell. It's the one that fuels me. It's the one I use." He turned around, his face unreadable in the city light. "But it's not the whole story. It's not the most important part." He leaned against the counter. After that day, she changed. She quit the motel. She had nothing. My father, he wasn't the family then. He was just a guy, and he wasn't around. She was alone, truly alone, and she started cooking. Cooking. From our one-room apartment, she made soup, just soup, in a big pot. She'd haul it down to Pier 9 and sell it to the dock workers for 50 cents a cup. It was winter. It was cold. I pictured it, a woman, alone on the windy docks. "It was hard," he went on, his voice a flat, rhythmic narrative. "The other men, the ones who thought they ran the piers, they tried to push her out. The cops tried to shut her down. She had no permit. She had no license. She had no one. But she wouldn't stop. She got shoved. She got fined. She kept coming back. Then she organized the other women. The one selling tamales from a cooler. The 2 sisters selling fish stew. She got them all together. They formed a group. They called it the Street Cooks Guild." He looked at me, his eyes burning with a dark, proud fire. "They pooled their money, $1 here, $1/4 there, and she, my mother, used it to hire a lawyer, a cheap one. But a lawyer, they got a business permit. They forced the city to give them a spot. She built the foundation of the first Harbor Haven kitchen with her own 2 hands, long before my father's money ever touched it, long before the Ruggiero name meant anything. He pushed off the counter and walked toward me. Stopping just outside that bubble of respect, he still, even now, maintained. "You are you, Eden," he said, his voice a low, fierce rumble. "You were you when you were scrubbing that floor. You were you when you refused to apologize to Bram Calder. You were you when you stood up at that tribunal, shaking so hard I thought you'd fall. But you spoke. I didn't give you that fire. I just got the gasoline off of it. You are you even if I disappear tomorrow." His words didn't soothe me. They ignited me. "Then I have to answer them," I said, my voice hard. I grabbed my phone, pulling up the slanderous article. I have to go public. I have to tell them the truth, that I'm not your puppet. I'm not your creation. "No." The word was so fast, so sharp, it was like a slap. "Absolutely not," he said. "It's a trap. Eden, you're not a public speaker. You're a witness. They will ambush you. They'll have a slick lawyer or a fast-talking host who will twist every word you say. They'll edit the tape. They'll make it worse. You are not equipped to handle that. So I just sit here, silent while they call me a criminal, while they undo everything I said at the tribunal. I thought you said I had fire. I thought you said to use the truth." "This isn't the truth. This is theater." His voice was rising. I had never, ever heard it rise. "They don't care about the truth, Eden. They want a victim or they want a villain. They will not let you just be you. I am not letting you walk into that." The word hung in the silent, expensive air. Letting. "You're not letting me," I whispered, the rage turning to ice. "You're not letting me. After all of it, your boundaries are my compass. Your signature matters. Your choice." Was all of that just lies? When it comes down to it, you are in charge, aren't you? I am just the laundromat girl you have to protect. "Eden, that is not what I mean," he shouted. It was a real shout. It hit me like a physical blow. The man who never raised his voice. The man who was all control, all quiet steel. He was yelling. "Stop it," he yelled, taking a step toward me, his face a mask of fury and fear. "You don't know what they're capable of, I do. You will not do this." I flinched. The old Gable Courts. Eden flinched. The girl who hid in the pantry. "You're right," I whispered. My hands were shaking. I turned away from him, grabbed my thin jacket, the one from my old life, from the hook by the door. I grabbed the black key fob. "You're right, I don't know, but I know I'm not going to be yelled at." My voice was thick with tears I refused to let fall. Not by a landlord, not by an inspector, and not by you. I walked out. I didn't slam the door, but the heavy click as it closed behind me felt final. I rode the silent, carpeted elevator down 27 floors. The night guard in the lobby watched me, but he didn't stop me. I just walked. I walked for hours. I had no destination. I just let my feet carry me down, out of the clean, glass and steel heights, back into the river wards. The rain started, a cold, miserable drizzle that soaked through my thin jacket in minutes. I didn't care. I walked past the boarded-up, blackened shell of the Spin and Dry. I walked past Gable Courts, which already had a high chain-link demolition fence around it. I was a ghost, haunting the ruins of my own past. He was right. I was scared. The city was huge and cold, and I was alone. But I was also me. I wasn't just his creation. I was the girl who had survived this. I was the one who knew how to make it to the next shift. My new, encrypted phone buzzed in my pocket. My hands were numb with cold as I pulled it out. The screen glowed in the rain. One message from Cassian. It didn't say, "Come back." It didn't say, "I'm sorry." It didn't say, "You're wrong." It just said, "I'm here if you need me." His boundaries, his compass, he wasn't controlling me. He was letting me go, and he was holding the line. I stood there in the rain on the cracked pavement for another 10 minutes. Then I turned around and walked back. It was past midnight when I let myself back into the suite. I was soaked to the bone, my hair plastered to my skull, a puddle forming at my feet. The apartment was dark, except for the cold, glittering lights of the city. He was sitting in the armchair, the one he'd sat in when he watched me sleep. He'd been waiting. I didn't say anything. I just walked to the center of the vast, empty room, dripping on the expensive rug, and I sat down on the floor. I crossed my legs. I was too tired to stand, too cold to care. "I need you," I said to the floor. I heard him move. He didn't speak. He came and knelt in front of me, right on the wet patch of carpet, and he put his arms around me. He pulled me against his chest, my wet, cold head against his warm, solid shoulder. He just held me, absorbing the rain and the shaking. "I'm sorry," he whispered into my hair. His voice was thick. "I'm sorry I yelled. I was scared. I was scared for you. I lost control. It won't happen again." "I'm sorry I left," I whispered back, my voice muffled in his shirt. "But I had to." "I know," he said. We stayed like that for a long time, the only sound the quiet hissing of the rain against the glass. Finally, I pulled back, wiping my face with my sleeve. "We need a new rule," I said. "Okay," he said, his eyes searching mine in the dark. "You're right. They'll trap me. I'm not smart like you in that way. But I can't be silent. It's my name. Cassian. It's the only thing that's really mine." I took a shaky breath. The story of me, my words, I have to be the one to decide how and when I use them. It has to be my choice. He looked at me for a long time, then he nodded. Slowly. "Okay, your story, your decision, that's the new rule." He stood, pulling me to my feet. He went to his briefcase and pulled out the thin folder that held my employment and protection contract. He took a heavy, black pen from his jacket. On the front page, right above his own signature, he wrote, "All decisions regarding Miss Clark's public narrative and testimony will be at her sole discretion." He initialed it. He handed the pen to me. My hand was still shaking, but I initialed it right next to him. The next morning, I made a call, not to the Chronicle, not to the big, flashy television stations. I called Jenna, the reporter from the Halcyon feed, the one with a camera and an audience of real people. "I'll talk," I said, "but not in a studio. At the kitchen today, during the lunch rush." It was chaos, but it was my chaos. Jenna set up her single camera in the corner. The kitchen was loud, full of the clatter of plates and the shouts of the dock workers, the smell of fresh stew and coffee. I stood in front of the camera. I wasn't wearing a suit. I was wearing my Harbor Haven apron. Jenna asked the question everyone wanted to know. "Eden, the Ashfords are calling you a power broker. They're saying your relationship with Cassian Ruggiero is criminal. How do you respond?" I looked right at the lens. My relationship with my employer isn't the issue. I'm not talking today to defend my private life. I'm here because I'm a worker, and I have the right to do my job without being harassed. I have the right to a safe home, and I have the right to my own name. I looked around the packed kitchen, at the faces of the people eating. The issue is that the Ashford family hired men to burn down the Beirut market. They hired men to kick in my door. And when that didn't work, they used my name on fake invoices to hide their money. They're doing this to me. They're doing it to Mrs. Aaron. They're doing it to all of you. I looked back at the camera. I'm not a victim, and I'm not a villain. I'm a person, and I'm not scared of them anymore. That's all. Lunch is ready. I turned, took off the small mic, and went back to the serving line. The video went up an hour later. It exploded. The comments, they were different this time. She didn't even mention the mistress slander. She's not scared of them. This isn't a mob war. This is a class war. And my favorite one from a user I didn't know she's not scared anymore. I knew Cassian had been there. I'd seen him in the very back, by the dish pit, his arms crossed, just watching. He left before I was done, never once stepping into the frame. That evening, my phone buzzed. A picture message from him. It wasn't a selfie. It wasn't a view of the city. It was a photo of an old, faded, blue denim work coat. It was hanging on a simple wooden hook against a plain wall. On the back, in faded yellow, stitched letters, was the Street Cooks Guild logo. The text came a second later. "The legacy is in the hands. Eden, not the name. I saved the picture. I looked at it and then at the city lights. He was wrong about one thing. He hadn't just gotten the gasoline off my fire. He had given me a compass to aim it. And my love for him, it wasn't making me smaller. It was making me bigger. It was making me, finally, me. The victory from my video at the kitchen lasted exactly 1 day. The Ashfords were finished with soft pressure. They were done with noise. They had been publicly humiliated, their money trail exposed, and now they were just a wounded animal, lashing out with everything they had. It happened at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. My encrypted phone rang. It was an unknown number, a video call. I answered. The face that filled the screen wasn't Gunner Pike's. It was Mrs. Aaron's. Her eye, the one I'd seen behind the security chain, was wide and terrified. Her gray hair was a mess. A hand was clamped over her mouth. Then Gunner's voice came from behind the phone. "Hello? Eden, your old neighbor here wanted to say hi. We're just inspecting her new apartment, making sure she's safe." The hand moved, and Mrs. Aaron let out a small, terrified sob. "Eden, honey, don't." The hand clamped back down. "She's a sweet old lady," Gunner sneered, his face finally appearing, leering into the camera. "It'd be a shame if she I don't know had a fall." My blood turned to ice. I was standing in the suite, but I was back in the pantry closet, a child holding my breath. "What do you want?" I said. It wasn't a question. "A trade. You and me. You're going to retract every word of your statement. You're going to say you faked the ledgers, the ones from the storage unit. You're going to take the fall, and you're going to bring me the originals of everything your mob boss boyfriend has. I don't have them." "Get 'em," he roared. "You've got 2 hours. Skyrail Depot 6 o'clock. You come alone, or your old lady friend takes a fast trip down to the street. Click." The line went dead. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. Cassian walked into the room, took one look at my face, and his whole body went rigid. "What is it?" I told him. His face was a mask of cold, controlled fury. "Cade," he said, his voice low. "Trace the call. Find her." He turned to me. "You are not going anywhere." "He said alone," I whispered. "He said alone to trap you. He's not going to let either of you go. He's cleaning up loose ends. This is an execution. Eden." "I don't care," I said, and the voice that came out of me was hard, a stranger's voice. She's family. She's the neighborhood. He's using her because of me. I am going." "I can't let you," he said, his voice flat. "Yes, you can." I walked right up to him, right inside the bubble. I looked him dead in the eye. "You have to. All decisions regarding Miss Clark's public narrative and testimony will be at her sole discretion. That's what the contract says. This is my narrative, my decision." His jaw was so tight I thought his teeth would crack. He was trapped. He was trapped between his every instinct to lock me in this suite and the promise he had written on our contract. He looked at me for a full, agonizing minute. The muscle in his jaw jumped. "Fine," he said, the word tearing out of him. "Fine, you go. But if your choice is to walk into the fire, then my choice is to build the fire truck. We do this my way. Cade, stop the trace. We know where they are. Get the team. We're implementing the daylight protocol." The next 2 hours were the most intense, precisely choreographed moments of my life. Cassian's daylight protocol was a 3-layer plan. It wasn't a mob hit. It was a legal assassination. Layer 1 was Cade. He and 4 other members of Cassian's security team men who looked more like accountants than soldiers were already on their way. They weren't armed with weapons. They were dressed as municipal transit maintenance workers. Their heavy toolboxes were full of fiber optic cameras, audio relays, and network gear. By the time we arrived, they would be hidden in plain sight, with eyes and ears on every inch of the platform. Layer 2 was the law. Cashin's lawyers at Aurelia Legal Aid had already filed a massive sealed digital file with the Crown Point Tribunal. It contained every piece of evidence. We had the ledgers, the fake invoices, the video of the truck from the Beirut market fire, and a new, sworn affidavit from me detailing the kidnapping of Mrs. Aaron. It was a legal dead man's switch. My encrypted phone was set with a timer. I had to enter a code every 5 minutes, starting at 6 o'clock. If I missed a single check-in, that sealed file would automatically unlock and become public on the tribunal portal. Every reporter, every judge, every cop in the city would have it instantly. Layer 3 was the authority. Cassian had made another call. The Urban Ethics Committee, the same one he'd called to the kitchen, was scheduled to conduct a surprise structural safety inspection of Skyrail Depot 6 at 6:15. They were coming, not with clipboards, but with a full, uniformed squad of urban transit police, creating a legal, official presence on the platform that had nothing to do with us. "Gunner thinks he's staging an execution," Cassian said, strapping the thin, hard panel vest under my blouse. It felt cold against my skin. "We're staging a public arrest." At 10 minutes to 6, I walked up the long, concrete ramp to Skyrail Depot 6, alone. The depot was the end of the line, a high, elevated platform exposed to the wind. The sun was setting, casting a sick orange light over the city. The wind howled, whistling through the steel girders. It smelled like ozone and cold metal. Far below, the city traffic was just a distant, angry hiss. He was there, at the far end of the platform, past the last boarding gate, Gunner Pike, and he had her. He was holding Mrs. Aaron by her thin upper arm, her feet dangling terrifyingly close to the open edge of the platform. The tracks were on one side, a 60-foot drop to the concrete on the other. "Right on time." Gunner shouted over the wind. He was high, his eyes wide and jittery, his greasy hair plastered to his head. He had 2 of his men with him, including the one with the broken kite tattoo. "Let her go," I said, my voice sounding thin in the open air. I stopped about 30 feet away. I held up a plain, sealed manila envelope. "I have my retraction." "And the drive, where are the files?" he screamed. "Right here," I said, patting my pocket. "Let her go first." "You think you're in charge," he laughed, a high-pitched, hysterical sound. He yanked Mrs. Aaron back from the edge. You little maid. You think you're smart. You and your pet gangster. You think you can just walk away." He was enraged. My video at the kitchen, the hands-off chant, the public humiliation, it had all broken him. "You're just proving my point, Gunner," I said, my voice as steady as I could make it, the words from the script Cassian and I had rehearsed. "You went through all this trouble. You took a 70-year-old woman hostage. You're just proving you're terrified of a girl with a broom." His face contorted. The taunt, the simple truth of it, snapped his last thread of control. "I'll show you scared," he roared. He shoved Mrs. Aaron at one of his men and lunged at me. He was fast. He crossed the 30 feet in seconds and shoved me, hard, with both hands, right in my chest. I flew backward. I stumbled, my heel catching. I was falling. A blur of motion, Cassian. He had come from the maintenance stairwell, silent as a ghost. He didn't hit Gunner. He didn't tackle him. He shot past me, his body moving like a striking snake, and slammed his palm into the red emergency stop button on the wall, just as the 6 o'clock train was pulling in. A deafening screech of metal on metal filled the air. The train, which had been gliding to a stop, locked its brakes, showering the platform in sparks. It created a solid 10-ton wall of steel between me and Gunner, a sudden, chaotic safety barrier. I scrambled to my feet. The guy with the broken kite tattoo was coming around the front of the train. He saw me. He snarled and reached for me, grabbing my arm. "Get over here!" A voice, cold, clear, and absolutely lethal, cut through the screeching metal. It was Cassian. He was on the other side of the train, his face visible through the window, his eyes locked on the man who was holding me. He spoke, and he spoke in English, the words a brand. "Who touched you?" The thug froze. He knew the line. The whole city knew the line. He looked at Cassian. He looked at me. His grip faltered. And then layer 3 hit. Crackle, whoomp. The public address system of the entire depot exploded to life, not with music, but with a piercing emergency tone. A digitized, booming voice filled the air. Attention, this is a public safety announcement. All activity on Platform 6 is being monitored. An unauthorized emergency stop has been initiated. Authorities are on site. Repeat, all activity is being recorded. Cade, it was Cade, patched into the system. The thug with the tattoo let go of my arm like it was on fire. He looked up at the speakers, his face pale, recorded, monitored authorities. "What is this?" Gunner shrieked, panicked, coming around the train. "What did you do?" My phone buzzed in my pocket, the 5-minute timer. I ignored it. I pulled the fake USB drive from my pocket. It was a blank, worthless drive I'd gotten from the office. "The drive," Gunner yelled, his eyes wide, seeing his escape. "Give me the drive." "You want it," I shouted. "You want the proof." "Give it to me. Ashford pays for results. He pays for the whole thing." He'd said it, out loud. "Here," I yelled, and I threw the fake drive. It arced through the air. He lunged for it, a greedy, desperate grab. He caught it. He held it up, a look of triumph on his face. He had the evidence. BZZT. My phone buzzed again, this time with a different vibration, a confirmation. I had missed the 5-minute check-in, the dead man's switch. Kate had just hit send. The real file was now public. Gunner was still laughing, holding the fake drive. "You're all dead. Ashford pays me to clean this up, and Mr. Pike." A new voice. Calm, authoritative. Gunner spun around. The structural inspectors, flanked by 6 uniformed urban transit police, were walking down the platform. Their clipboards were gone. "What? Who are you? This is a private—" "We're the urban transit police, sir," the lead officer said. "We're here on a structural inspection, but we've just witnessed a public threat, an assault, and a confession to conspiracy, all of which is on public audio and video." He nodded to the officer next to him. "The Crown Point Tribunal just received a full data dump confirming your testimony. You're under arrest for kidnapping, assault, and racketeering." Gunner's face was a mask of utter, complete shock. He looked at the fake drive in his hand. He looked at the cops. He looked at me. He understood. It was her," he screamed, pointing at me. She set me up." "Cuff him," the officer said, bored. It was over. The cops swarmed him, clicking the restraints on his wrists. The other 2 thugs had their hands up, surrendering. "Mrs. Erin was huddled against the wall. I ran to her. It's okay, Mrs. Erin, you're safe." She grabbed me, her small, thin body shaking, and just sobbed into my jacket. "Oh, Eden, oh, baby girl, you came." I just held her. I held her and breathed in the smell of her old-fashioned perfume, and I knew I'd never be that girl in the pantry again. Cassian walked up. He didn't touch me. He didn't touch Mrs. Erin. He just stood a few feet away, a solid, silent presence. His hands in his pockets. He was stepping back. He was letting me have the moment. The rest of the crowd, the passengers from the train, Jenna's camera crew, who had arrived with the inspectors, was swarming us. A microphone was shoved in my face. "Eden, what happened? Who were these men?" I looked at the camera. I looked at the crowd. I looked at the flashing lights of the police. And I looked at Cassian. "We protect each other," I said, my voice clear and loud, carrying over the wind. "We protect each other with the law and with the light." The public execution at Skyrail Depot 6, broadcast by Cade, confirmed by the transit police, and sealed by the automatic data dump, was an earthquake. The Crown Point Tribunal, publicly humiliated and politically trapped, had no choice but to act. They held an emergency preliminary hearing. The Ashford family's lawyers, so smug and polished, were now frantic, their faces pale. It didn't matter. The tribunal suspended the entire riverfront project indefinitely, pending a full criminal investigation. The city's case was airtight. Gunner Pike, facing a lifetime in prison, had started talking. He gave up everyone. Bram Calder, the man who started it all, the man with the greasy raincoat and the fake ID, was formally indicted, not just for harassment, but for conspiracy, fraud, and racketeering. The Docklight Syndicate, with its leadership arrested and its main revenue stream severed, simply evaporated. They scattered like roaches in the light. The city, suddenly, wanted to make me their hero. I got calls, offers. A publishing house wanted a tell-all book. A political action committee wanted me to be the face of their new Workers' Dignity campaign. They wanted to put my face on posters. I said no to all of them. I wasn't a poster. I was a person. I made two choices. First, I accepted a new position, offered by Cassian on behalf of the Harbor Haven Board. I became the part-time operations manager for the community kitchen. I wasn't serving stew anymore. I was ordering the supplies, writing the schedules, and managing the budget. My second choice, I re-enrolled at Port Halcyon Community College for the spring semester. I was going to finish my nursing certification. I was going to get my degree. My future was going to be built with my own hands, not just with the ones that had protected me. Cassian, for his part, was managing his own aftershock. The other families in Port Halcyon were watching. He had shattered the old way of doing things. He had used the law, the media, and public opinion as weapons. He had exposed a rival, yes, but he had also brought an unprecedented level of official scrutiny down on all of them. He was a problem. So he made a move. He called a meeting. He didn't invite the heads of the families. He invited their lieutenants, the men who actually ran the streets, and he proposed a new code of street conduct. It was simple. No violence against civilians, period. No soft pressure on families. No harassment of workers. The people, he'd apparently said, his voice quiet in a room full of killers, are not the business. They are just the people. It was a declaration of peace that was, in its own way, a declaration of total power. Surprisingly, many of the smaller groups, tired of the heat, agreed. The storm had finally passed. The city and my life settled into a new, quiet rhythm. The terror was gone, replaced by work, by study, by exhaustion. And by him. It was a Saturday night. The rain had started again, a soft, gentle tapping on the glass of the 27th floor. The suite was quiet. We'd turned off the harsh overhead lights, leaving only the warm glow from the fireplace and the lamps. A low, quiet jazz record was playing from a speaker, all soft horns and whispering brushes. We were in the kitchen, trying to make pizza from scratch. It was his idea. It was a complete disaster. "You're supposed to toss it, right?" he asked, his brow furrowed in concentration. He was wearing a black t-shirt and dark pants, and he had a dusting of white flour on his left cheekbone. "I have no idea." I laughed. "I'm a heat and serve kind of girl." "Here, you try." I took the sticky ball of dough. I tried to stretch it. I tried to spin it. It tore. A massive, gaping hole in the center. Flour went everywhere. On my shirt, on the floor, on him. "Well," he said, looking at the mess, "I'm not telling the street about this, either." I dipped my hand into the bag of flour and, before he could react, I drew a line of white down the front of his black shirt. He froze. He looked down at the flour, then up at me. His eyes were dark, but they were crinkling at the corners. That slow, rare smile was spreading across his face. "Oh, well," he said, his voice a low rumble. "That's how it is." He didn't grab me. He just dipped his own hand in the bag and gently, deliberately, tapped the end of my nose. I was laughing, a real, full, breathless laugh. As I tried to dodge him, my hands up, he caught my wrists. His grip was light, just a circle of his fingers. The flour, the kitchen, it all faded away. The jazz music seemed to swell, filling the silence. We stood there, frozen, his hands on my wrists, flour dust motes dancing in the firelight between us. He let go of my wrists. When he didn't step back, he just offered his hand, not palm up, like in the hallway, just an invitation. "I have no idea what I'm doing," I whispered. "Neither do I," he said. "Dance with me, Eden." I put my hand in his. He drew me out of the kitchen, into the open space of the living room, in front of the window wall of city lights. He put his free hand on my back, just at the small of it. It wasn't the chaste, protective barrier from the night of the kiss on the balcony. It was firm. Sure. His palm was warm through the thin fabric of my shirt. It was an anchor. I put my free hand on his shoulder. It was so broad, so solid. I felt the muscle tense under my touch. We didn't really dance. We just moved. A slow, shuffling two-step, barely in time with the music. It wasn't about the steps. It was about the orbit. I was so close. I could feel the heat radiating from his chest. I could smell the flour, the soap on his skin, and that clean, iron scent that was just him. I was tired, a deep, soulful kind of tired, the kind that comes after a long, long battle. Without thinking, I let my head rest against his shoulder. I closed my eyes. I could feel the steady, slow thud of his heart under my ear. I matched my breathing to his. He stopped moving. His hand on my back splayed wider, pulling me closer, until there was no space left between us at all. His other hand came up, leaving mine, entangled in my hair, cradling the back of my head, just like he had that night. "Eden," he whispered, his voice thick, his lips brushing the hair at my temple. I just tilted my head back. He kissed me. It wasn't the desperate, hesitant kiss from the balcony. It was slow and deep and sure. It was a kiss that knew, finally, that it was welcome. It was a kiss that tasted like home. His lips were soft, warm. My hands moved from his shoulders, sliding up to cup his face, my fingers tracing the strong line of his jaw. He let out a low, rough sound in the back of his throat, and one of his hands slid from my back up to my shoulder, his thumb stroking the sensitive skin of my neck, sending a shiver through my entire body. We just held each other, rediscovering each other in the quiet, firelit room, our breaths mingling, our hearts beating the same frantic, unsteady rhythm. There was no rush, there was no taking, there was just giving. His hands were a map, tracing my shoulders, my back, my arms, as if memorizing me. My hands found the tense muscles in his neck, the soft fabric of his shirt. We just held and kissed and breathed. It was a promise, made in 1,000 tiny, silent movements. Finally, he rested his forehead against mine, just as he had on the balcony. His breathing was unsteady. Mine was, too. "Eden," he said, his voice raw. "I know," I whispered. He led me, not with a pull, but with a gentle pressure on my back. We walked away from the city lights, away from the kitchen. The door to the bedroom, the one I had slept in alone for so long, was open. He didn't push me toward it. We just stopped at the threshold. He kissed my forehead. He kissed my closed eyelids. He kissed my cheek. He didn't speak. He didn't have to. The door didn't slam. It didn't even click. It just swung closed, soft as a sigh, leaving the jazz and the city lights behind and leaving us in the quiet, velvet dark. The first thing I saw when I woke up was the light. It was streaming in, bright and clean. I was in his bed. He was gone, but the pillow next to me still held the warmth of his head. I was wrapped in a soft sheet, and I felt peaceful, not safe, not protected, just whole. I found him in the living room. He was already dressed, standing at the counter, drinking coffee. He was looking at a file. My file, the contract. "Good morning," he said. He smiled, that small, real smile. It still hit me like a sunbeam. "Good morning," I said, my voice husky. He pushed the file toward me, and a pen. I had my lawyers draft the amendment we discussed, the one we initialed. I looked down. It was the contract, my employment, my protection, but the front page was new, and the very first clause, Clause 1, was the one we had written in the dark. 1. All decisions regarding Missy Clark's public narrative, testimony, and personal agency will be at her sole discretion. And at the bottom, the signature lines were different. My name wasn't tucked away below his. It was a new document. My name was on the first line. Eden Clark, Operations Manager. His was on the second, Cashin Ruggiero, Foundation Benefactor. 2 parallel lines. My hand was perfectly steady as I signed my name. He closed the folder. I have one more thing, he said. He seemed almost nervous. The Harbor Haven profits, the legitimate ones. I'm transferring a large percentage into a new endowment. He pushed a second, new folder toward me. It's a scholarship fund for the children of River Ward families. It's called the Work Coat Scholarship Fund, after my mother. I opened it. Cassian, this is amazing. I need a co-supervisor, he said, not looking at me. Someone to sit on the board, someone who knows the neighborhood, someone who will keep the legacy honest. I looked at the signature line. He was asking me to be his partner, in business, in life. I signed my name. We held the celebration a week later, not in a fancy ballroom, not at the tribunal. We held it at Pier 9, right where his mother had sold her first cup of soup. The Harbor Haven kitchen staff cooked for 500 people. It was a community meal. We were celebrating the official indictments of the Ashford leadership. The city, our city, the one on the ground, felt powerful for the first time. Mrs. Erin was there, laughing, holding court. Jenna, the reporter, found us. She had her camera, but it was off. One last question, she said. Off the record, for me. Cashin nodded. I saw the files. I saw the risks you took. The car. The Skyrail. You put your entire organization on the line for her. Why, she asked, why protect her so much? Cashin was quiet for a moment. He looked at the crowd, then he looked at me, and he turned back to Jenna, knowing his words were in their own way, on the record forever. Because no one has the right to touch her dignity, he said, his voice clear and strong, and because I love her. My heart stopped. He'd never said it. Not in the dark, not in the light. Jenna smiled, satisfied. She nodded, and she walked away, leaving us alone in the crowd. I turned to him. Me too, I whispered, my voice thick. But you remember I'm not your secret. A slow, beautiful smile spread across his face. He reached out and tucked a stray piece of hair behind my ear, his touch warm and sure, right there in front of the whole world. You were never a secret, Eden, he said. The whole city knew. From that very first night, you were never just anyone's maid. He took my hand, and we walked down the pier, away from the crowd, just walking. The salt air was cold, the sound of the waves a low, steady hush. Our love had been born in the shadows, in the smell of bleach and fear. But it had been forged in the light. It had grown through respect, and now it was finally standing on its own. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I truly appreciate you spending your time with me. Let me know what you thought in the comments, and tell me where in the world you're listening from. I'd love to connect with you. Please consider subscribing to my channel, Mafia Boss Stories, and like this video. And if you really enjoyed it, please hit that hype button so this story can be heard by more people. Your support means everything.